Hello and welcome to episode 147 of The Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. Joining me is Mr. Howard. How are you doing, Howard?
Very well, thank you, Greg. How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, can't grumble. Just plodding along.
Excellent. Glad to hear it.
Good. Before we go anywhere, let's talk Element Games. I put another order in all weekend. My nephew is 7. When we went away to Oxford, me and the missus, for a weekend a few weeks ago, and I took her to the Thirsty Meeple board game cafe, and she had a whale of a time playing Castle Panic. So we are starting to get a couple more board games in the house, and Settlers of Catan must be bought, especially when you find out the neighbours like it.
It's one you've got to have in the cupboard, surely.
Well, I've got Settlers, the Star Trek version, Star Trek Catan, which I'm not sure would go down quite as well. Plus, I don't know that they've got the expansions for it. So I went, you know what? I need a classic Settlers. So hopefully we'll have a few board game nights with the neighbours and stuff. Always a good fun, cheapish night in. So always good. So it's a
good brand to get around to stuff like that. Yeah. So I actually didn't know there was a Star Trek one. That one now being
there's
browsing the internet straight
it's like
after
Monopoly. I think it's like Monopoly.
Right.
Star Trek one's really good actually as a base game. But that kind of thing. I was like, oh yeah, I can get that from Element along with my. What did I buy? The Auric War Clans and the Stormcast book for Age of Sigmar. Managed to hold back on the monsters yet till I actually get some painting done to see if I'm actually going to collect them.
That vulture though.
I just everything like
fair enough.
Just all the Auric stuff's amazing, and the dragons for Stormcast. Trying to hold off on that because I've got plenty to paint for that, and I do need to get some stuff done. I've got Kragnos still sitting there in box that I haven't opened up yet, and that's
I didn't realise you'd gone quite so big on these guys. Wow, I didn't realise you'd gone for it with these. Oh, nice.
Well, Age of Sigmar.
Well, particularly with the destruction.
I have.
Forces.
So, I have a very small amount of ogres, mostly painted, and a very large amount unpainted from my old Warhammer army. I have. I do have a Sylvaneth army that I bought off a mate. But I also have one big Gargant, one Mega Gargant, a couple of smaller Gargants.
You have a lot more Sigmar than I thought you did.
I got sent. I've also got all my Daemons, which can be used, Sigmar.
Of course.
But I got sent Dominion by GW, and actually, I was talking about it with I think it was my brother-in-law actually, and my said, "Oh yeah, I got sent this box. I've got these and these." And Emma said, "Yeah, but you're selling them, right?" And I was like, "It's like that meme, that Anakin meme going around with Padme at the moment." I was like, she's like, "You're selling them, right?" I'm like, "No."
I didn't ever mention that.
No, but if I can handle the Oryx, have got a lot. Like the Stormcast are easy to paint. It might not be any good, but they're easy to paint. The Oryx have got a lot more detail, so just trying to decide whether I'm going to actually dive in before. Although I probably will because I love the range. I think it's amazing. Kind of the nature of the very simian orcs with their squat legs and long arms is phenomenal.
I was listening to Cult of Paint discuss the direction of those, the design, particularly like influence of artists, and influence of games and things, and discussing a bit that design direction. I think they put it. I think it was quite a brave move actually to go for that particular style for Games Workshop in particular, with such an entrenched idea of what orcs and the greenskins races are. To them take them in that direction, where they could have perhaps more safely done that with a chaos faction or something like that to expand what it means to be a greenskin in their range. I thought was quite bold and really it's quite cool actually. Even though it's not something I would personally go down the route of collecting, but I could see why. I mean, the miniatures are just extraordinary, really. Yeah.
Indeed, and you can get them all from Element Games as they come out. And yes, to support us via Element, if you use the link that's in the show notes, or I sometimes tweet out on the weekend, on the Saturday about 10 o'clock, and it's also, if you can't remember where it is, it's also on our website. If you just click the banner, and then you purchase. Once you press that link, then we get a kickback off Element based on what you buy, and that all helps pay for the hosting and all the other bits and pieces that goes along with recording. And then if you really feel generous, then also when you put in your crystal codes to get double crystals for you, if you put in our code or my code GRE259, you can support us that way and chuck us a few crystals. Do you happen to know yours, Howard?
I don't know mine off the top of my head, and to be honest, every time I go on it, I just put that code in anyway, as I did with a recent order for, I've discovered Pro Acryl Paints, and Element are the only distributor of them in the UK. It turns out, having been somewhat exclusive to the US, it's been a nightmare to get here in the UK for some time, but Element now stock the full range, and they are in stock, which I understand is unusual, or is perhaps has been long awaited. And Element very kindly, when I reached out to them, they very kindly put together a bundle of the paint range for me.
Oh, that's cool.
I didn't say that in any way that was how I'd linked with them or anything like that. I didn't mention anything with Imperial Truth. Didn't need to. I just reached out to them and said, "Is it possible to do this?" And before I knew it, there was a bundle up on the website, and they gave us a link. Like, heroes, wonderful. And I would recommend those paints. I mean, they're getting hyped reviews all over the place, and to have quite such consistently good reviews across all these different channels was over a number of years. I was quite impressed, and I hadn't really explored them. I've been using them on a Heresy project, no less, and I'm a big fan. So I would highly recommend anyone to go and check those out. Even just pick up a couple of your favourite colours.
Sure.
It would go very good through the airbrush, very good through a brush.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Howard to tell me his code. I'll put that in the show notes as well. So if you want to support Howard with your crystals and chuck him a little bit of credit, then you can do that as well, which will be cool. But yeah, you just to go back a little bit, you were talking about Cult Paint. I can't recommend their channel enough actually on YouTube.
Completely
I've talked about it a few times. Generally, the way particularly Henry goes about his hobby and gaming and stuff it fits with kind of what I feel. And I know he's talked recently about kind of his attitude changing a little bit. I think it's just a similar journey to one that I went on a few years ago, kind of looking at what you want from the hobby and just concentrating on that. And if something doesn't fit with that, then you don't have to you don't have to be part of it if you don't want. Tailor your hobby. It's the same as I say. I saw something on social media. I can't remember, I was talking about something at the weekend, tweeting through something, and someone said, "Oh, social media really is terrible." I think it was Aaron actually, but Aaron was.
Oh yes, there was a bit of a thing there,
Heresy. Yeah, so Aaron Dembski-Bowden put on there about gatekeeping in Heresy, and there was a myriad of answers, some of which were less than pleasant from people with less than pleasant timelines. Someone said social media really is the worst, isn't it? And I'm like, no, I don't think it is actually. It gives people a voice that they didn't have before, but that's what it does. And these people were not particularly pleasant people before social media came along.
Yeah.
They will be long after it merges into whatever it's going to be. But by far, it's been a positive for me, a huge positive. And you need to be actively cultivating your feeds. Like, if you don't want to see that stuff, there's, people get worried about echo chambers. You don't have to be part of an echo chamber whilst you cultivate your feed. That's not a problem. If you were to go, 20 years ago, if you were to go into, there were 2 pubs in your village, and you knew in one pub every conversation that was going on there would annoy you, frustrate you, whatever, you wouldn't go to that pub. You'd just go to the other pub, wouldn't you? It's no different than that.
For sure.
So yeah, I think with all these things, I actually stopped listening to quite a few podcasts recently. I don't know if I talked about this on the show. So I drive for a living, and I can listen to hours upon hours of podcasts a day, and I listen at 1.5 speed. So I listen to 50% more podcasts than I would do normally in that time. And I found that a lot of the time I'm just listening to shows that aren't that great, that are okay, and B, I'm taking in too much information, so it doesn't
I
stick.
think that's a thing. I do think that's a thing. Being
It's a
selective like
big
that and
thing.
thinking otherwise you're almost overwhelmed by it. And as you say, just yeah, how are you? You need to be selective on that, and I think you take joy out of that, and you sort of listen to your instincts a bit. So which ones am I
Yeah,
actually enjoying? Yeah,
and I'm listening to more books, and I'm trying to put a bit more music in there. Again, the music thing is to stop the overload of information, and to enjoy listening to music a bit more. I'm not a massive muso, but the things I like, I love. But yeah, I got rid of a load of podcasts that were just average, or I felt I needed to listen to. I
yeah,
was like, why
yeah,
am I doing this? Like, is this really awesome? Like, Marie Kondo, my podcast listening, like, is it bringing me joy?
yeah,
Like, not a huge amount. Like, why? Get rid of it. It's
for
gone.
sure. Yeah,
Um, but and so Henry did a bit of that. But yes, the Cult of Paint YouTube channel is very cool. There's lots of you obviously expect good paint tips and all that jazz on there as well. Um, but I think the understanding, as you say there with the Crawl Boys, of what's gone into something.
it's a very considered way of doing things, and I
Yeah.
respect that a great deal. There's a great deal of thought. I mean, the passion is clear across everyone contributing on that, and particularly as they're starting to get guests on. I'm speaking specifically about the culture of paint segment. I think that's the
Yes.
highlight for me. As a resource, incredible, particularly for those of the heresy focused world. They're having a little focus on each legion and making an army painting discussion about that, and then expanding that out with all kinds of other examples and techniques. Fantastic. And this is just on the YouTube thing. But then their discussion piece is what really I find particularly entertaining. And I think that the consideration they put into it, and it's an area I'm particularly interested in with it's not just the painting, but it's the design, it's the artwork, it's the influences. They did a show recently on how much video games had influenced that, then starting to discuss it as an industry side of things. Very good. I just think it brings a level of almost professionalism, which is just great. Just nice to be immersed in. Really thought through, considered output. Something to aspire to. Great. I couldn't recommend it enough.
And then Andy Wardle will make a silly joke. But
Oh, it doesn't
but
take
yeah,
itself too seriously. I
no,
think
not at
that's a
all.
good point. Absolutely, no, it's a key point actually, because I think the way I'm describing it there makes it sound like it perhaps does, and it doesn't at all. And it's what makes it a pleasure. It's like these are people you would want to hang out with, and just talk hobby with passionately. And you're like, yeah, great.
Yeah, and I think if you like, well, I would like to think that if you listen to this show, then it would be the same the kind of content that you would get something out of. And certainly there are other podcasts that if you listen to them, it's probably not going to be your thing.
Yeah,
And again, that's fine.
which is
You
fine. Yeah,
listen.
different things for
Yeah,
different people. What people want to get
absolutely.
out of it, absolutely. But that is certainly one that chimes with me very much so, and I would recommend it to anyone who
Well,
likes
yeah,
that side
and
of things.
kind of to bring up the Aaron Dembski Bowden thing again, like I think what's interesting for a lot of people is there were a lot of replies with no, it doesn't happen, blah 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 blah. I never see it, da 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 da. And I'm like, I was, someone even replied, and I think maybe the nature of short form communication meant their reply was less nuanced than their actual opinion, but was along the lines of the people, the kind of the toxicity of hating things, being powerful, um, and people being very quick to say they don't like something,
Mm,
and that being a problem. Um, and actually, no, someone not liking something is not a problem. That's never a problem. It's fine. You're allowed to not like things. You're allowed to criticise GW. We've done it on this show plenty. I like to feel we do it in the right way. Uh, the the real problem comes from people who don't offer an opinion. They offer a fact. Well,
mm,
what they think is a fact. This is terrible. This is awful. And then insinuate that if your opinion differs, it's because you've got skin in the game, because you're either a shill to GW or a complete fanboy, can't think for yourself, or or you're desperate to get something from GW, and I don't, I can't listen to, and actually, weirdly, that's both for positive and negative, like things. There, people can be toxically positive, where they're like, oh, everyone hates this model. Kind of, if you don't like it, get out. You can't understand how good it is. Like, you're allowed to not like models. I do think sometimes people don't appreciate the talent whilst also not liking the aesthetic. That is a thing. But either way, like, if you're demanding that people are following you, then that's not cool.
It's just it's a weird place to be. But overall, I still think it's a benefit, isn't it? I mean, you came into this talking about social media and about how that had come in. I still think that's a benefit. I mean, I attended a hobby hangout. First time I'd had a hobby hangout of strangers, if you like, people in the community, rather than just a group of friends doing something like that. And it was fantastic. It was a Titanicus one, and it was brilliant. Really enjoyed it. There was people there who I had been aware of. I'd seen them on Instagram, or I'd seen them doing other things, and it was just great just to hang out and say hi. Yeah, don't know you, haven't met. It's the sort of conversation I would want to have at a weekender or at an event or anything like that.
Was that a podcast organised?
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was the Maximal Fire guys. Yeah, they'd done that with the Battle Blink store. They put that on. I dropped in. There was about 20 people. It was great. Just a good hangout. I'm gonna search out some more of them, because I think they're a really good idea.
I wish I was more of a people person. But I struggle with a lot of them. Just nature of who I am.
But then there's a few people who were just. They didn't actively contribute. Yeah. And that was fine.
Absolutely.
There wasn't a sense of everyone. I mean, some of the guys there were sort of driving it and saying, "Hey, what are you working on? How's it going?" But there wasn't too much, and it would just be say hi, and then people could chime in with as much or as little as they wanted. And actually, that helps work.
Yeah, it can be a little bit different for me in terms of having particularly a Titanicus podcast as well.
Entirely. Yeah, I'm speaking in generalities. Obviously, it's been far terrible for you. A rival podcast stepping in. What?
What is interesting is it took me a while to learn that I'm an introvert. To understand that I'm an introvert, because I can be a loud, brash guy. I'm 6'2" or whatever. Bald head, which doesn't help people's opinions. Sometimes wear football shirts and all that. And a big guy as well. Now, it's quite square-shouldered. I'm not a skinny thing. Never will be, unfortunately. But even to myself, I kind of just thought, I'm an extrovert, but actually, I'm not. Like, because it took me a long time to learn that extroverts and introverts it's how you recharge almost is the important thing. It's what you do once you've like kind of drained yourself. And I'm not always good in group situations. I can do that, but you find what works for you, don't you? At the end of the day.
It's about trying out some new things. Maybe it doesn't work, but then you try it out. Maybe it does, and then maybe one particular format of it works, and maybe others don't. And that was one I hadn't tried before, and just doing a variation on that had been organised through social media. That is something that would have been quite difficult to organise another way, and it was just great to hang out with people from all over the country rather than the usual crowd. I'm fortunate living in London that there are places where you could go and do that. I could go and hang out, and most people have a lot of people are fortunate to have a friendly local gaming store or a games workshop or something similar where they could go and do something similar. Hopefully that there would be a like-minded group of people there. You never know, but there's different ways of going about it. This just made it super easy. I could rock up. I would have wanted to do some painting anyway. I could have been listening to an audiobook, could have been otherwise actually stick on the mic and speakers or webcam as it was in this case, and it was great. It was just a whole different outlet for it, and it was I got some little Titan Hunter infantry painted while I was doing it, chatting to people, and it was just very relaxed. It's just another outlet for it, outlet for the hobby, and a way of meeting people that might now see them at an event or see them around and say, "Hey, good to see you." And that's got to be a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just important to remember that all these things are tools for you to use. And if something doesn't work, put it down, walk away from it. Even if every single person you know likes doing it, if you don't like doing it for whatever reason, put it down, walk away from it.
Completely.
That's fine. And sometimes it's hard for people to do that.
Well, particularly there's so much. There's so much. Drop one, and you'll find another one that is better, and then you have a better overall experience or use of your time.
Kind of, this is one of the most rambly openings we've done. I appreciate.
I was going to say, we clearly we haven't recorded in a while. Wow.
where we go back, where ADB was talking, and essentially what I was down the long meandering road. What I was trying to get to was perception. Perception is everything. Like, it doesn't matter whether you see it. It doesn't matter whether it's there or not. In a way, if people perceive an issue, then it will put them off doing things. What I was talking about there was I was going to get around to getting into the game. Like, if people think there's gatekeeping in the hobby, then it will stop people jumping into the hobby. Now, you can sit there and shout, "There's no gatekeeping where I am," blah 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 blah. It kind of doesn't matter. Like, you need to accept that some people think there is. Now, how do we change that? We be more we don't be more. So we be more active with promoting the hobby and being inclusive and those kind of things, and encouraging new people into the game and stuff like that. And perception's really, really big thing on that point, to the point where I was on there kind of saying to people, yeah, you know what, actually, I do think that some of the podcasts in the past have been and have had a negative effect on people's perceptions of the heresy, and may not have had that within the heresy, weirdly. But where you're talking about, where I'm talking about people enjoying stuff, like back in the day, I've said this before, but I was at Adepticon, and someone had heard me and said, "Hi, you, Greg, and whatever," and chatting away, and they said, "Oh yeah, on this podcast they were talking about this," and I said, "Sorry, I don't listen to that podcast." And they were like, "You don't?" I'm like, "No, don't really enjoy it. It's fine, but it's not for me." And they were like, "Oh," I said, "Yeah, I only listen to these few podcasts, heresy podcasts." And they were like, "Oh, it's kind of nice to hear someone else say that." Like, you don't have to follow that thing. I know for some people that's not as easy. I'm a stubborn, willful old git who generally doesn't care too much if people think I'm weird, and I've had that all my life. So I can quite easily take a separate path, and for other people it's more daunting. But if you can reach out and do it, and if you can in the way that you were doing it there, if you can pop onto a meet and greet and you get on there and you think, actually, I don't really feel like I want to say anything, but you can sit and listen and you get enjoyment out of that, it's fine.
Absolutely, yeah. I know. I just encourage people to try out these new things because they're out there, and you just think, yeah, I'll give that a go. Maybe it will open up a whole new side of things. But you never know with stuff like this. And then, and indeed, drop it equally. Say, actually, I'm going to give myself a bit of space,
or indeed run one. It's quite interesting, actually, how the least suspecting people can lead stuff, where even to themselves, but they think, "Oh, I'd never do any of this," and all of a sudden they're like, "Wouldn't it be nice? Well, there's nothing around here that maybe I could do something small," and it goes on. But anyway, lots of cool stuff going on.
To try and segue these things together, I feel like there's been a bit of an uptick in heresy hobby recently. Now, whether this has been through the discussion of what may or may not, what is likely to be coming, is coming at some point in the future, who knows? But something seems to have lit a bit of a fire under the community, and people picking up little projects, and then that tends to spread, doesn't it? I feel like this stuff, and events opening up again must have contributed. There's definitely something in the air because there's a lot more projects people are working on.
Yeah, the leaked info, the fact we've had releases, and then the fact that events. I think those three things, plus I'm sure there are other factors as well. Have all added into people getting on with projects and looking at what they're doing. It's good to see.
Yeah, it is. It's exciting to see stuff like that out and about again. I think that's really quite good. It's inspiring because you're seeing people work on projects. You just see that going on. I've been working on heresy projects, finally moving on some of them. Even got a heresy game in. You've been to an event. I mean, and just seeing people's community grow is quite nice. And I hope we'll see a lot of people come into the game because there'll be new vectors to come into the game in the
and
not too
that's
distant
important
future.
as well. So yeah, before we get into what's been going on, then, so you've been painting and playing.
I have. My good friend Stuart, who long-time listeners of the show will maybe remember, he joined us on one occasion to talk about getting into Heresy at around about the same sort of time I was resurgent in the whole thing. And Stu, certainly, there's a little group of us who are very good at encouraging each other to pick up more than a few items, shall we say. And Stu has amassed quite the collection. And he's gone down the route of picking up items that are already painted. So other things that people are moving on. And he's curating a collection there and then adding to it so that it comes together cohesively. As a result, he's got fantastic selections so that you can just turn up and use one of his armies. So we had an event We had a few people over there the other day, and we could just turn up, and he had prepared some matched forces, small forces relatively. I think they were about 1500, 1750 type point forces, and we could just play a game, and it was brilliant. He had the room to do that, and it was. He's very fortunate to be in that position, and it was really good fun. Accordingly, he and I decided to take out. Neither of us had played these forces before. He took Space Wolves, I took Thousand Suns, and that was the first time we'd really dealt with psychic shenanigans to that degree,
Right.
and that was a learning curve for people who were just coming back into the game. Particularly when you're playing multiple systems and you've played multiple editions of games, just having to remind yourself, hang on a minute, how does that work? And what are we doing here? Do they get that all the time? How does that? Do you have to charge that? Do you have to do that way?
Yeah.
So those two legions in particular, or particularly the Thousand Suns, when you're picking that up, there was some stuff to get our teeth into. I think the guys playing Titanicus got 2 games in the time it took us to do that one. But that said, as a result, I'm now putting together a little Thousand Suns force. But thoroughly enjoyed it. It was great to be on the table again and playing some games and moving nicely painted models around. It was great. Really enjoyed it.
That's cool. Yeah. I think one of my big weekend takeaways was remembering the Heresy rules, not the Warhammer 40k or the Warhammer rules or the Age of Sigmar rules or the old edition 40k rules. So much. Like, can you do this? Like, oh no, that's the other game. Yeah,
oh my
that's
God.
wrong.
When you're playing multiple systems, that is a thing. I believe wholeheartedly in cheat sheets. Cheat sheets are the key all day long. Just something that takes you through some sequences.
Is that needs to be a cheat booklet?
Well, yeah, we did that in the past with a version of 40k back along when the Universal Special Rules were a thing. We just would print them all out onto like A3 sheets and just stick them around the room. You could just have them as you could say, right, what's that one again? Oh yeah, it's over there. Bang, that one. Cool. Just so you're not spending your time flicking through a book.
Yeah, no, it wasn't too bad. It's the little things like, do you have to get into base-to-base contact when you're charging in this game, or is it just half an inch? Or is it an inch?
Yeah, okay.
Those little things which just every now and then I'm like, oh no, I have to do this. Oh, that's right, yeah. It just pauses you for that second.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's good. It's good. So yeah, you've been out buying some Thousand Suns, yeah.
Yeah, well, rather repurposing some models that were in a cupboard, adding to that with a few extra items. Bought my first Proteus Land Raider, armored one in this case.
Cool.
Looking forward to putting that together. That will be going to the Thousand Suns, and yeah, just trying to put together a little Tartarus armored Tribune at the moment. So yeah, that's a slightly further away force. The force I'm actually putting together and actually getting paint on models now is my Blood Angels force. I have a Blood Angels collections of models going back to when I started back in 2nd edition 40k, and I've decided no, I actually would like to supplement that with a dedicated set for Heresy now. So still continuing my plan to build up as a starting point, the sample army lists that the Goonhammer very kindly put together from their articles on Heresy, and so I'm building a Blood Angels force based around that. And I'm looking at them now. I've got my first 10 Assault Marines lined up with a couple of 3D printed axes in there, and trying those out. That's all been worked out very well. Finally got a red colour scheme I'm a big fan of. Some Angel's Tears, and that's it so far. And I've got a plan designs on a Grav Rhino with a Grav Command Rhino. I've got some ideas on that, just because I've like this idea of a sort of almost like a little scouting type force or something that's gone in undercover to coordinate what's coming down from the heavens. I think that could be quite cool, particularly using some of the old school camo paint schemes for rhinos and things that we saw from back in the day, type thing. So there's some ideas there behind a little couple of heresy forces that I've got in mind, and I think it's a good time to be diving in like that.
Yeah, for sure.
What have you been up to? You've been at an event.
Yeah, I'll talk about the list and how it worked later on. I think we'll kind of have the bookend last episode's kind of review of the list, because a couple of people said they enjoyed it. There were a few incidents on the way, so some things changed, but I can talk through kind of what worked, what didn't work, how people played against it, which is an important thing with Daemons. Had a couple of conversations. It was clear who had played Daemons before and who hadn't when I was playing them, and it was clear who kind of what style of game people play as well. I think Daemons can easily show kind of who you're playing. But yeah, I broke myself for a week. I'm one of the slowest players painters I've ever heard of, and I broke myself for a week trying to paint stuff, including staying up till midnight on the Friday at the event on a table, just so I could put models on the table which aren't fully painted, it's hard now I'm home, because although I'm looking at maybe doing an event later this year, and I might take the Daemons for that, which might encourage me to get them out and finish them off. But also, I've got so much other stuff to paint for little bits and projects and things that I want to do soon that it's so hard to do. But if I could get, and the day before I left, the new big Mercia miniatures demon arrived at my house.
Oh, no.
So I've handed that on to a mate to paint. So that's going to be probably my super heavy demon, my gargantuan creature.
Right.
Need to see what it looks like once it's finally built. But I was talking to some people about Angroth as well, which has always been one of those ones. Shall I get an Angroth? Which I probably will at some point. So plenty more on the Demons front. The worst thing is, actually, it's not even that demon army now, although there are other things I want. I desperately want Games Workshop to release the brute models with wings, which they probably won't, but I will get like 9 of them in a shot if they do, for cost me a small fortune. But
I was going to say that's a hefty investment, but they are nice though.
I would nice absolutely models. Do it. But then thinking about options for other demon armies, like completely new ones, it's like that's a terrible, terrible plan. Like don't start down that road yet. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, so I haven't done, since I got back, I've done no hobby.
But there was quite a bit of hobby leading up to that event.
Oh, there was too much, basically. Well, I have been selling off my heresy books and stuff, but which is also taking up time, like listing books. If it takes 10 minutes to take all the photos of the book, get the listing up, sort your pricing out, do all that, and you've got 60 books to list. It takes a long time. So that's taken some energy out of me as well. And then you've got to pack them up as you sell them as well and get them. So that all takes time.
Oh, yeah, good point.
But it's well worth doing. But kind of clearing out the house a little bit and waiting for the garage to be done. And hoping that over the next few days I actually start thinking, I should put some paint on some models. Because that army that I've got as well, I bought some Bellicors for it as well to use as my arch demons. So I need to paint them up to add to the list of other stuff I need to paint. So
that's where your hobby inspiration is at the moment. Is it in the Demons?
I mean, it is. And then I have a talk with my mate again, who's just bought a Thousand Suns army, and he's going to add them into his Black Legion for 40k. and we are going to do at some point a Crusade campaign just for two of us.
Oh yes, you mentioned this.
So
yeah.
So I want to get more Space Wolves painted up for that, and I've got a lot of them sitting around as well. And I do go to the odd 40k one-day event down in Battle locally, which is good fun. So I want to mix the army up I use for 40k as well. So I need to paint some stuff for that. Playing Adeptus Titanicus in a couple of weeks for the first time in a while, and I've got boxes of unbuilt Titanicus stuff, and I haven't even painted a proper manifold yet. So that all needs to get sorted.
I've got to say, that one game of that will, as you know, that's going to draw you back in. I had a fantastic game of that the other day.
The problem is I don't enjoy painting them at all. I don't even enjoy magnetizing them or anything like that. So it's always a hard one for me to go, oh, I really should get my Titans out.
That really surprises me. You're not a fan?
Oh, God, no.
Wow.
I mean, I don't enjoy painting, period. But then when you've got to do trim, on Titans, it's like,
well, this is an opportunity to develop a paint scheme that doesn't involve trim.
No, it's too late now because I've started them. I'd have to restart all the things I've glued stuff on.
Oh, you've already... okay.
Yeah, so I mean, to be honest, my scheme is very, very simple. Don't get me wrong, but it's still just... Yeah, I don't find it a fun paint job at all. So...
that is...
And I'm also thinking about... I don't know. My Heresy projects, I don't think I want to make any decisions until we get more information, basically. But I think I've got two... I've got two Prosperos and one Patriotic Calf box. I think. No, I've got two Calf and one Prospero.
That's the way round I've got it.
I'm just having a look on my shelf. It's far away. And I'm not sure how. I know I've built one of the Calf boxes. But I think the other two might be fairly... I'd have built the Prospero. I might have a Calf box untouched, pretty much. I'm not too sure what to do with them. I'm going to have to leave it a little bit. I need to do some Space Wars at some point, which again is an airbrush dependent thing, and I'm waiting for this room to be done, so everything's a bit like... So who knows? Who knows? And then, you lose an evening to recording, and then, then the in-laws come around. The problem with lockdown stopping is people want to be social, and I'm like, I don't really care. It's bad, isn't it? And then things like football started up, like a bit of football training. It's good fun, and cricket season's coming to an end, so I'm gonna get some weekend days back there and stuff. But then there's always something else, It's like
it does. But then in some ways, I've found those when you have too much time, and I'm like, this is fantastic. I'm going to spend the entire weekend doing this. I'm going to build so many models and paint so many things, and then I get frustrated when at the end of that weekend I've built a model or I've opened a box or something, or I'll find that that 1 hour that I've grabbed somewhere is more productive than that entire weekend that I plan to give. That pressure on your time can be quite a good motivator, depending on what you enjoy, of course.
I've got a book with a list of jobs that have been like 5 weeks sitting there thinking, I really must do that, and I really must do that as well. And just by the time you sit down, just got to get into the habit of getting stuff out and getting on with it. I think I need to break down little projects, like little targets for each system.
Yeah. I think that's a good bit of advice. We mentioned Cult of Paint earlier. They've got a great show talking about focus, and that's got a lot of good tidbits in there, good reminders of things that seem obvious, but it's still quite nice to hear them reminded. And one of those was exactly that: lower your targets to make them break it up into manageable chunks. Very good way of tackling it, really. I mean, it sounds obvious to people, but it's still worth reminding ourselves. But Titanicus, big fan of that. Played some games of that as well. Got invited up to a friend's house. It turns out he lives just up the road, which is fantastic. Diadrin, as he's on Instagram, I would highly recommend anyone check him out and see the amazing work he's doing with Titanicus. He's done some fantastic Mortis with a candy red scheme. He's doing some Metallica at the moment. Brilliant schemes. He set up a board, built all the terrain, all painted. He had a couple of us over, and he sort of GM'd a game at one point as well, which is brilliant. If you've got that when there's 3 of you and you're playing it that way. Had some really fun games. I took my Storm out for the first time, took them out for a walk, and it was a couple of really good fun games. First time I'd faced that mana pool that if they stand still, they can kind of lock armor, and you
Right,
don't get
yeah.
any of the bonuses for flanking and stuff. Hadn't faced that before. My goodness, that throws you when you, particularly when it denies the flanking and rear bonus,
Sure.
and it also denies the structural damage.
Yeah.
Wow, they're Ignatum really playing to their defensive theme. Superb, yeah. It's just such a brilliant game.
I think the other thing with Titanicus is I want to do it all.
Yeah.
Like, and that's also another problem with Titanicus. It's like, so I went up to
a nice problem, but a problem nonetheless.
Yeah, I did the weekend where I tried out the Stygian Darkness guys.
Venator, is it?
Yeah,
I think. I don't remember. Yeah. Anyway, the spider ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to play with them like a lot, but then as soon as I read something else, I'm like, actually, I really want to play with that, and then I really want to play with that. I really want to try some of that. So yeah, there's it's a whole that game in itself. I'll tell you what we have played at the club. Talk about a palette cleanser. Been playing Curse City, and it's a crying shame that we probably won't get any of that. Although, something tells me that if they sort everything out, a second edition could happen.
You think? I didn't think they put those kind of resources into something like that. Well, they'd do a different game, wouldn't they? I mean, they didn't do a second edition.
But they must have worked on expansions. They must have done because they got.
Oh, I see what you mean. A second print run, effectively.
Yeah,
sorry, I thought you meant like a second edition, like a second edition.
No, sorry, a second.
Yeah. Yes, I could see that with expansions. Otherwise, if they release an expansion, surely people are going to lose their shit over that.
Yeah, I don't think they will unless they do a second print run. So I could see them doing it, and I can see them not doing it. Like it's one of those ones, right, where I wouldn't be surprised either way.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably more likely that they won't. But I was talking to someone who, again, they were talking about GW were looking at getting their own printing, like arm, for being able to do the boxes and all that other stuff that goes with it as part of their expansion. Oh, that's what the other thing we were going to talk about today was the chairman's report, which I completely forgot about. Yeah, if they could do that, like it's a fantastic little game. Longevity-wise, is like that's where I can see them needing some expansions with it. But we were at the club till gone midnight because we underestimated we started a bit late and then people were chilling out and then all of a sudden I was like, guys, we've got like this much to do. Like, let's get on with it. But there's some real kind of panic moments in there and stuff.
Right.
It's great fun. Right, we should move on. We should move on to talking about what's been going on.
News.
So,
because there is substantial news. I've read breakdowns of it. I haven't read it itself. I couldn't bring myself to quite commit.
I'm going to hold my hands up once it gets to all the figures and stuff. It's been a long time since I've done any business studies and stuff like that. I can get a vague idea. It's not worth the time and effort for me. I'll read a breakdown on that. Basically, GW are making a shed load of money. That's good for GW. Not a problem. And it's not just through selling lots of IP either. Like, their sales have been up.
And continue to be up, even though we see various lockdowns and those sort of things coming to an end.
Yeah, absolutely. What kind of real interesting thing for me, one of them was the amount of machinery that they're putting in. So we've talked about their new site and everything else. They were putting extra machines in. The thing I don't know is how many machines they had to start with. But they are getting, I think it's 3 more machines up and running about now. And then in January, 5 more machines, which wasn't part of the original plan, I don't believe.
Right, okay. So that is quite a substantial.
Yeah, this is, so, reading into things, like this is them kind of saying, okay, this isn't just a bubble. We have improved, and we are going to, you only have to look at the Games Workshop website to see how many like plastic things are not in stock. And try to get on top of that. So all this machinery, we talked about it with Matt as well. Like, just helps ease the load as well if they have if they don't need them all running all the time, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Where are we? So yeah, combined with 5 new injection molding machines. Oh, there's 5 this month, 8 more in January 2022. Hopefully.
Oh wow!
So 13 more injection molding machines.
So it does suggest that demand is up substantially.
Yeah, they are. So you only have to look at the website.
Yeah.
But the other thing it potentially shows is a commitment to more plastic. And now you get into conjecture. If they're making, like, basically, does this allow them to push more resin production to plastic production? Which, we've seen Necromunda, Blood Bowl, the Titanicus have all gone plastic with the odd Aeronautica Imperialis, mainly plastic with resin bits. If they push more heresy that way, Lord of the Rings is pretty much like that as well.
I was going to say, I think all of the games in that kind of pantheon it's a good model where resin is good in the small scale production, but for a whole game system, it's problematic. Plastic clearly is superior in terms of its ability to just, well, one, its cost, and two, the just ease of working and the quality control and a whole range of different things. Whereas the odd specialist item, that works very well in resin. That's absolutely fine, and I could see them shifting entirely that way.
Things like your Legion-specific Praetors.
Yep.
Where, like, let's assume everyone plays even numbers of factions. There are 18 legions plus demons, talons, militia, everything else. Like, how much of your heresy player base is going to buy Praetors for a specific legion? The odd person will convert them. Generally, that it's a small percentage of that line, so they would probably always stay resin. There is an potential for generic stuff to go more towards the plastic line, which would be great.
Such a vast, when you really start looking at that, that's a vast amount of stuff that can be made into plastic and expand it into a range. I mean, it's a huge
range. But then also, once it's in plastic, it becomes more kind of tempting to make it available 40k.
Yes.
Because then you can keep up with demand, and then you also, by having that extra revenue stream, you're making it more viable as a plastic model.
Yes.
So, for instance, it's things like Mechanicum, which are a bit weird.
If
they made Mechanicum and put them into 40k with rules, lots of people would buy them for sure. But who knows? I mean, that's the weird kind of. That's the grey area of something like Mechanicum, I think. But if you look, you only have to look at the Custodes could all be made to fit plastic. And lots of the Legion stuff could, but we'll see.
The Legion stuff seems the most.
Obviously, absolutely.
Yeah, the Legion stuff, anything that's in the generic Legion collection, from vehicles, flyers, and many infantry. Weapons will be interesting. I wonder if weapon packs. I think Necromunda's moving some of the gang specific weapon packs that they had. I didn't think they would go plastic, and they did. They must have sold well enough, or there was some compelling reason. They essentially transitioned them into plastic packs, which were better value and arguably easier to work with. I thought it was interesting.
I also wonder as well, because they can hold on to them a longish time. I suppose they don't want to. They've got extra warehouse as well. I mean, this is something someone was going. I don't know what. I don't know how reliable they were as a source. Basically, saying their warehousing space is massively still under. Is small. I don't know how true that is. That's hearing that from a third source. But yeah, maybe that's part of it as well. But you're just taking pressure off. Like, maybe they just want to move away as much from resin as possible. Like, it's intensive, it's awkward, it's like it's got a high kind of. You have to be on it with quality control, which they haven't always been. But also the big thing is, plastic is less. It's less of a market for recasting for China.
Yeah. Completely.
So you might not be, your percentage profit might be going down, but you're not losing out on sales. So actually, you might be better off doing it that way as well.
I would argue as well. In addition to that, that is a thing. I mean, it's not just there either. There's several places that do that.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
then you do get the feeling that those people who you have a conversation with who are keen on that or tempted by that as a route for putting all the various issues of that aside for a second, plastic is superior to work with anyway. People would choose that. It's like, oh, it's a bit, maybe it's cheaper to do it this way, but actually they'd prefer to have the plastic version if it exists. Do you think if it's in plastic, I'll get it that way?
One of the guys last weekend, they had ordered some dodgy resin, and customs held it and sent a letter to them and said, "Why are you trying to import like dangerous substances into the UK?
Ouch!
This stuff is not nice stuff." Which is if you get aside from all the ethical reasons for recasting, if you're cutting into recast stuff, wear a mask because like they don't care what they put in it. But yeah, it's all good fun.
I was going to say beyond the recasting world is the 3D printing world. That's becoming increasingly hot topic. 3D printing is easier to find something or a proxy or something similar that's approximating it in resin than it would be plastic. Plastic again is still preferable to working with 3D printed resins or plastics or otherwise. To me it's where they can be. You sell a superior product. It's a bit like it's the issue that it's a broad generalization, but it's a similar thing that the music industry and film industry have gone through with issues they had as well, where people were going down alternative routes. Just make the thing more convenient. Make it more convenient and people will go for it. So you're like, oh, I could go to that. Yes, all I have to do is invest in this and spend all of my time doing it, and it may fail. And you're like, or the convenience of just this. It's a hobby. It's a fun pastime. It shouldn't be a chore.
For a quick aside on that one, I don't know if you've heard of Lost to the Nails podcast.
I have not.
So this is a guy from the Splinter Mind. I think it might be Brian.
Right,
I could be wrong. But second episode they had Carl Tuttle on it. It's they do swear. It's not safe for work. It's not like over the top. Yeah, Brian and Eric, I think. So Brian from Splinter Mind and Eric from the Variance Hammer blog. Their second episode was 3D printing. Is it going to take over? Which was quite funny because Brian was like, the more you tell me about it, the more I realise I'm not going to have a 3D printer. And I'm in the same boat as him. But really good podcast, actually. They deal with things in the way that, smashed my mic. Deal with things in the same way, similar way to the way independent characters do. Quite in-depth, reasoned conversation, well thought out. And the one on 3D printing was really interesting when, particularly a northern podcaster who might be part of the newest part of a quartet, goes on about everyone will be 3D printing in 2 years' time and everything else. But I won't be. And I've got the room for it, let alone the people who are in a small flat in the middle of London.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's plenty of people who've got no interest whatsoever. Got a different conversation when anyone's got a family.
Yes, and whether I purchase from a licensed 3D printer, maybe. But, there are still issues with 3D printing. But anyway, that's a whole different aside.
We could talk for hours on that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What else was there in there? So they are ranked 66 in the top 150 global licenses. Games Workshop, apparently.
Interesting. Right, okay.
Which is not bad, is it, really, when you think about it?
When you realise what those licenses out there are, that's quite a prestigious list. It's interesting because
I don't know how they base that.
A lot of people talk about the good point. A lot of people talk about their financial performance and about how they're outperforming absolute stalwart companies in the world. They are, billion-dollar type company stuff. Is one aspect, but it's interesting when you start putting it in that context. Like, where are they in terms of comparison to comparable licenses?
Yeah, they're starting to unlock the power of their IP in a way that a way they haven't done before. And Warhammer Plus is only going to help that because it will grow. It will grow their backlog as well as growing an audience, and will lead other companies to see the viability of things like animation and stuff like that, which is cool for them. What else have they got? they're preparing for future growth by purchasing more land around their facilities. Not getting ahead of themselves, but they're building on the growth they've had. So sensible expansion, which is good. They're working on a new web store. But this is a long project, obviously.
Right. Okay.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. And they're having their own dedicated recycling facility that's going to open this year.
Ah, that's good.
So, someone asked me, are they finally going to recycle sprues? The problem with recycling sprues, I think, is because they DPD out all their orders to their shops. They don't have their own delivery vehicles. Is the cost and effort of getting them back to a recycling facility will probably outweigh any benefit. Certainly was the case that once you've paid for it and shipped it back, recycling it at GW is pointless.
Pointless from what perspective?
Somewhere local,
economically, you mean?
And potentially environmentally.
I see. Right.
If you could find somewhere local to do it, then that would work. But to actually ship something back to be recycled is a
yes,
a no gain kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. It's an embodied energy conversation or carbon type thing. Okay. Yeah.
But whether that changes or not, I don't know. But yeah, there was it was quite. Yes, I didn't go through it all, but those were the big points that I picked out of it. On top of the fact that they're performing wildly and money and all that stuff. Cool, groovy.
Which is good. That's what we like to see. Keep that continue. Long may it continue.
Well, I think the problems for the last 18 months have been supply. That's been their biggest problem, and it looks like that moving forwards, it will take a while for them to catch back up, but they will solve a lot of those issues. Because again, one of the reasons I know people have gone to recasters is because you can't get hold of stuff. The only way to get hold of certain models, which whether you agree with it or not, you understand why. If someone wants to go to a tournament with a model and they can't get hold of it, they're not going to go on eBay and pay.
That's a risky play, but that's true. Yeah, but comparing to someone pricing up items because of supply and demand is another thing. But clearly, it's something they don't want it to be the case. They don't want people to want stuff and them not to be able to fulfill it.
Oh no, exactly. No decent company, and it always makes me laugh when people talk about full scarcity from GW. It's like no. They want you to spend your money with them. They would love you to go and buy their models. But yeah, so that was the chairman's report, which was the financial report for the year. We'll keep an eye on that, and I think we'll start to see that roll out as it when it does, which will be cool.
But what was the next thing of the many bits of news that are out about this?
Should we start with Argyll Tal?
What a model that is! Yeah, stunning.
What a fantastic model. And we also got rules for him.
Yes.
Which is very rather lovely
as well. Yeah. Good, pretty good. I thought they were pretty tasty rules as well.
Yeah. So essentially, the main, apart from the people who thought, you should have the rules for the spear and everything else, Guardian Spear, fine, fair enough, cool. He doesn't, whatever. There were a few people like, he's only AP2, AP3 on his claws. So essentially, we're looking at weapon skill 6. He's Galval back, so strength 5, toughness 5. He's got 4 wounds, 5 attacks, 2 up save. He's jump infantry. He's got Master of the Legion, which is cool. And when he's the warlord, where are we? When he's chosen an HQ choice, he can have. Where is it? Basically, he can have Galval back as here we go. Galval back Dark Brethren units as troops choices if he's the warlord. I still don't think
that's cool. That is cool,
but it's cool.
No, but it's cool. It's just because of the number you could have, you could fulfill. You're not playing it on the basis of scoring.
No, and you are
going out to rip and tear.
Yeah, you can still take vets and terminators and things like that who can score. So that's cool. So the unit he joins is a unit with this special rule, and I assume Damned transfers over. never scores regardless of provisions of the mission being played. So he can never score. He's damned. That's cool. And what? So he's got 5 attacks. He's got rage, so +2 attacks on the charge. He's stubborn, and he has demonic claws. So strength +1, AP3, melee, rending, shred, 2-handed. So he's strength 5, so strength 6, melee, so rending and shred. So a lot of people were disappointed that he didn't have an AP2 weapon and he's just going to get killed by praetors. Fine, whatever. I kind of like the fact that we're not seeing everything with AP2. It's quite dull. You could argue that praetors with Paragon blades are seen too often. And I would argue that, to be honest. I think you can mix that up. But he's got rending with 5 attacks, 7 on the charge, and he's shred, so he's re-rolling any failed save. So there might not be many because he is strength 6, but it does help you get in there with those rendings. So unit champions, chances are you will kill one. And you're initiative 5, so you're going first.
You're going to put him in a unit. Yeah. You're going to put him in a unit of Calball back in all likelihood. It's a thematically strong thing to do, and that him conveying feel no pain into that Galball back unit is
pretty good.
Is handy to say the least.
Excuse me, that was a wrong button pressed.
just a little bit of the warp there, just to keep us on our toes. I like that.
You're right. And people mechanically are like, a praetor comes in and he's going to instant kill. Well, he needs to roll 6s to instant kill, and
I think that's kind of fine.
And you've still got a demonic save as well. So
he's got a 5+ invulnerable, and you've got with the unit around him because you've got challenges and things you can play with. But if you've got the Galval back with him, you can have their unit leader, unit champion can take certain things. You think, I think he's cool. I think he's still quite a sinister guy. I think he's a good one.
He's only 185 points as well.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, and he is striking initiative 6. So I say, if you've got a sergeant with a power fist that you're worried about or whatever, the chances are you are going to kill that sergeant, and go through it. And even small characters, the chances are you are going to go through them. So I don't have a problem with it. I think he's really cool. I like the rules. I would also say, because the other thing is, we don't know if any rules are going to change in the next couple of months.
Well, this is what's worrying me.
we are valuing this under the rule set we have. And you know what? The rule set might not change. But if the rule set does change so that there aren't as many sergeants around with 2+ armor save, then all of a sudden he is that much better. Those little things that might come in. I personally would like to see, and everyone went, he's going to die to a praetor with a Paragon blade. And I'm a little bit like, it's sad that every army's got to have a praetor with a Paragon blade, but why wouldn't you? Maybe Master of the Legion gets handed out a bit more to some other characters, so we can have options of different stuff leading an army.
That would be. That's an interesting way of dealing with it, rather than putting restrictions on Paragon blades, for example, or on praetors in general.
I'd love a champion to have Master of the Legion, so I could have a cheaper. He's not going to survivable as a praetor. He won't do quite as much, but he can still pack the punch when needed. And lead the army. And it's but he's again, it's not that, oh my god, here comes another praetor, that kind of thing. So yeah,
I think he's good. I did also like the fact they released him alongside the Ultramarines. I just thought that was nice.
Yeah, it was cool.
Just if you're going to do it, I like that. That's cool. Just have a little.
That was a quick turnaround, wasn't it?
Very, actually. I was surprised to see them quite so quickly. I would tell you what I was impressed with, just the community's response to the Imperial Fist release.
Yeah, the
number of people that have been building them is brilliant.
Yeah, the one to the Ultramarines was a little less kind of excited. People had issues with the Ultramarines. It's fair enough. They are fairly blingy, but they are Ultramarines, and I think they fit in well with the Caesarean, particularly the power armor.
And I think they fit in well with what Forge World set out to do with the Ultramarines. They did specifically the Heresy ones. They wanted to say we have got some things here that are the sort of glorious Imperium kind of aspect of what they're about, the glorious march of the Imperium.
I think there's an element of the community, and I'm not saying this is wrong, who prefer the grim dark aesthetic. When you've got that much gold on a model, and it's not the way they want it done. Like, you then give that to them and they paint it up the way they paint it up, and it looks like a different model. It's not the aesthetic they want, right? And because it is that extra bling, I love the heads on those.
Yes, I think they're great models. I'm a fan, but they are, they are a bit. To me, they're what you would want from a special model like that. If you want to make a more toned down version, the kits are there for you to make it yourself effectively.
Kits,
whereas this lets you say, actually, I'm not going to go out and custom sculpt a load of kind of quite extreme filigree and that sort of stuff around them. And I thought that was quite, in keeping, as you say, with some of their more special units. Fine. I thought they were a nice release, but I just thought the Imperial Fists Praetor seemed to capture people's heresy imagination a little bit more. And I can see that, much like Alexis Pollux is used. You haven't, everyone's converted an Alexis Pollux at some point. I wonder if those Praetors will go the same way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's some cool posing on those Imperial Fists. Some interesting sizing.
Yes,
I'm not going to jump into that. There have been some interesting sizing on Heresy models for quite some time, to be fair.
And I don't think Heresy's alone in that. I think that's true of a range of the games that Games Workshop do, where their character models in particular are bigger, are done deliberately to stand out, to be the sort of centerpiece. They are markedly bigger than the things around them. Heresy's less forgiving for that as a game system, I think.
There might be a slight scale creep anyway as well.
Yes.
I'm not too disappointed.
I can see why it would irritate. I mean, if there's certain games are forgiving of it and certain games are not. Titanicus would not be as forgiving. No. Something that's about machines in that way, and I could see people saying that the same thing with Heresy, where it's more a historical war game, future historical war game in this case. There's a sense of it having that but there's some pleasure taken in the fact that it's got a consistency, but then all things move on and all things develop. So it's kind of going with it, and it's going in the direction and the trends that they're going with in design. So I can kind of see where they're coming from, but I can see why people would be a little bit irked by it, but then you kind of work with that.
This is one of those things where I'm like, lots of people are going to be like up or down on it, like right from the start. And I'm sitting here thinking, let's actually just wait a bit. There might be a bit of scale creep. You know what? I don't mind either way, to be honest. I'm sure it'll be fine. But let's wait to have righteous indignation when we know that it's in rightly placed, shall we say? But they're cool models. That's all I can say on that one. I
haven't picked them up yet, but I'm keen to.
Of course you are. It is the essence of being Howard.
My fragrance that I'll be releasing for Christmas.
Indeed. So we still haven't seen the Terminator Sons of Horus model.
Terminator.
They showed off the Praetor, didn't they, when they accidentally sent the Praetor?
Yes, I see what you mean. You mean that there will be a Terminator to go on?
I see your point. I'm assuming so, and we're working through. So we've got Fists, I'm sure there will be the odd release, but there seems to be that concerted effort now to kind of catch up those bits, which is not a bad thing.
Which legions are left that need them? Salamanders?
We did this the other time, didn't we?
Oh, did we? Oh, we went through it. We did it. We
went through a few of them, and it was like,
we won't retread those steps.
I forgot they'd done the White Scars, and I forgot they'd done the whatever. There were a couple. There's not that many, but there are a couple.
Right, got it.
But and it'll be interesting to see what else they do around that. Probably I'll leave that a minute. I will just bring up, so you can win a Warlord Titan with Forge World at the moment. If you want to spend some money at Forge, if you're thinking of spending some money at Forge World, do it soon, and you'll be entered into the raffle to win a Warlord Titan. Unless you live in certain countries, isn't it? I think it's really restrictive.
Right, okay.
I don't think you can win it if you're in America.
Oh,
the whole of America. I saw some people talking about it. Have a look, see if you're allowed to win it, and if you are, go for that. I would say. But that's cool. Lore Masters. So we both got Warhammer Plus, haven't we? We are kind of a target market for Warhammer Plus. I
Very
understand that a lot of people might not have it. That's fair enough.
I can understand people waiting.
Yeah, they're building up content slowly, and again, I understand that. I feel I'm going to get value from it. The Age of Sigmar app's coming out soon. I'll use that. I use the 40k app. I want the model, so I'm already up. Like even without the content, I've enjoyed the battle reports. They're nothing special, but they're good fun. I haven't watched all the programs yet, but I'm enjoying what I have watched. And one I watched was Lore Masters. So this is a series where they're going to, pick a character, planet, fight, moment, whatever from the lore of Age of Sigmar or 40k, and discuss it. And they're going to use multiple different people depending on the topic. And Wade leads us out talking about Abaddon. And I just kind of wanted to mention it because I tried to listen to some YouTube lore videos a few months ago, and I found a couple that were okay, and then I just got very bored of it very quickly, mainly because of inconsistencies, a lack of understanding of what of context for a lot of things that have been said about characters, but also a lack of appreciation of kind of how the lore evolves.
Mm.
So, there's stuff written about Lehman Russ 20 odd years ago, 30 years ago, which I love the fact he chopped the head of a Warhound Titan, jumped on it from a building and chopped its head off, which I think happened on Talon, which now he wasn't on Talon. So you can dismiss that. It didn't happen. It could be rewritten somehow, but you just kind of don't bring it up anymore. It's like there are various bits with an evolving the way Games Workshop laws evolve that you can write stuff off.
So that was exactly. That was an unreliable report or whatever.
A very.
They got the location. Yeah, exactly. They got the thing. That was the Talon City in such and such a place. And you're like, right, okay.
Yeah, but what's nice about Abaddon, it was 17 minutes, I think. So it was quite concise, which again, so I was like, I would love to do a lore video, but I wouldn't do it that well. I wouldn't have the time and effort and energy, and I wouldn't be able to not waffle on for hours. But it was 17 minutes covering the major beats of Abaddon and what he got up to. But when they handled stuff that could necessarily be seen more than one way, it was handled that way. It was like, some say that, the stories say that this, this could happen, blah, 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 blah. So it felt very true to, I say, the context of everything within it. And I think within a 17-minute kind of period, if you've been playing Games Workshop games for 30 odd years, chances are you're not going to learn anything majorly new off that Abaddon piece. But if you know someone who doesn't know the lore that well, don't send them to your favourite YouTube, person who's read Wikipedia, Warhammer Wiki and whatever, which is factually incorrect in certain places, and at best lacks understanding in other places. This is the horse's mouth of GW with people who understand the lore, which doesn't necessarily mean you get definitive answers all the time, which again is not necessarily a bad thing.
I think it sounds like they've gone about it the right way, in a good way, in a compelling way. I haven't watched it yet. I may well straight after we finished here, and I love the idea, and I think Wade's a good intro to that. I'll be interested to see who else they get alongside it, because I think he's an excellent. His work on their their sort of podcast series that they did, I thought was brilliant. I think he's got
Yeah,
a good
he knows his stuff.
temperament
He's
for
been
it.
in the company 20 odd years or whatever.
And he's got a manner that I think suits that very
Yeah,
well, actually. He presents it
absolutely. He
very well with
delivers it well.
enthusiasm, without it being too hyperbolic,
Yeah.
without it being too sickly, for want of a
Yeah,
better
or
word.
trite. Or,
That's a good, better way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Agreed.
it's all hand, and it's not overly reverent either. It's like,
No.
there is reverence there because of the nature of what it is. Or it wouldn't be any good if it wasn't, if it didn't respect the law. But it's not OTT, which is good. And what was quite funny was I was going back on the Warhammer community article where they had an interview with him when they announced it, and the little tagline was which kind of sums it up actually: highlighting key themes and dispelling bad memes.
Okay.
And there's nothing I hate more than those terrible memes about characters, because I'm like, well, like the problem is, again, you tell a lie often enough, through a bad meme because it's misunderstood, and then people are believing the meme, and then they get angry when they're like, oh, but this isn't that character. It's like, no, yes, it is. Like, someone misunderstood it somewhere. Someone thought it was half funny. All of a sudden, like
everyone say, well, it must have come from somewhere. Yeah.
Certain character's an idiot, and it's like, actually he's a genius. It's just that whoever started that off didn't understand what they were talking about properly, or misunderstood something, or what have you. And
that can take some real enjoyment away from people. Actually, they're like, I really like that character. I'm really invested in that. And then other people are turning it into a laughing stock or whatever. And you're like, well, yeah, it's a bit of a shame that those people can't enjoy that then.
99.9% of memes are terrible anyway.
Yes.
Like, they just are. The odd one that comes through. And then loads get posted on our Discord. It's a generational thing as well. I appreciate that. Like, God, I just don't want to see that bloke turning around from holding his girlfriend's hand looking at another girl. Like, it's been done. Like, get over it. It's not funny anymore. Move on. And that was a good meme. Like, that worked. The other ones that you see all the time popping up, and you're like, I don't even no, just get out of my face. But I think that for me, that key, that phrase, I read after I watched it, and I was like, yes, that's what I want my lore videos to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you just don't get that through YouTube. They don't, and it's not always their fault. Someone, I can't remember which YouTuber it was. I'm not going to say it. They've only been in the hobby for 5 years. And that's not their fault. But no matter how much you read up over 5 years, I've been in the hobby for a considerable amount of time longer and read through. Like, back in the day, there wasn't that much, lore. If you want to keep up with the lore now, then you're reading every book that comes out, or even getting the gist of everything that comes out at the moment. That's more than you could handle without even going back 25 years and reading.
I was only thinking that the other day, actually. I was thinking, particularly seeing Warhammer Plus open up some of the old, older publications that aren't readily available now, but are quite recent publications. I remember at the time things like the second edition 40k codexes coming out, and just absolutely consuming those and thinking, I want to read everything, because there wasn't that much to encompass everything at that time. Whereas, as you say, you try and keep up, and I know of seasoned people who have either worked in the company or people who have just given up trying to be across everything.
I've
just can't.
Basically given up. I get my Age of Sigmar lore mainly through podcasts now.
Yeah.
I'm like, something has to give somewhere. I'm not even keeping up with 40k. Like, I'm keeping up with Heresy, just about. Right. I keep up with 40k as much as I can, but I'm like, you can't do it with 40k. Yeah. Like, Age of Sigmar, you know what? It's cool. Don't get me wrong. I haven't got the brain space to do it.
No, it's Age of Sigmar was one I give. And frankly, I came to a sort of Age of Sigmar. I didn't follow fantasy battles in the same way that sort of many people
back in the day I did. Like, I could, we would be in Games Workshop, Veterans Night, and we would be talking about the latest thing that happened in 40k, or the latest story that came out, like the old stories of 40k, and then we'd switch to Warhammer, and we're talking about old Warhammer lore. I've still got a load of that old Warhammer lore in my head. Like, you can't do everything. And this is like, I'm currently reading Star Wars Empire Strikes Back from a certain point of view. And not quite as good as the first one, in my opinion, but still good. And I'm like, you know what I want to do? I want to go read a load of Star Wars again. It's been years since I've read some Star Wars books, and such really good Star Wars books. Whilst I'm currently listening to Harry Dresden, there's so much out there. Yeah. How many people do I know who are rereading the Wheel of Time at the moment in anticipation of the TV series coming out? Like, there's too much. There is just too much. So having an official source, even though it still deals with contradictory sources within that, I think is a very good thing. And I would suggest, there's going to be, people share their Netflix accounts. People are going to share their Warhammer accounts.
Yes.
If you know someone who's desperate to learn more, obviously there aren't many lore masters, but send them there first. Because that picture of Abaddon is very different from the picture of Abaddon spoken by a 35-year-old doing a YouTube video. He's like, Abaddon had 13 crusades and never achieved nothing. It's like old, boring logic, right? And it wasn't true then when people were saying it, and it's definitely been proved not to be true now.
It bodes well, I think, for what it could be. I think that's one of the things that when they announced what they were doing with Warhammer Plus, I thought that was one of the more promising aspects of what they were able to take on. I thought that's something that they will be well suited to. There are other things that I think they've got a bit of a mountain, not a mountain to climb, but they've got a learning curve.
Their feet. Yeah,
they've got a learning curve on a few things. Yeah. Whereas I feel this one is one that they are quite well suited to doing.
Oh, big time! Yeah, big time. This should be. If they can't do this, they shouldn't bother doing any of it really, because it would be terrible.
I think they could drop the ball easily with it. They could have dropped the ball with it, but it was something that was very promising, and I'm pleased by the sound of it that first one sounds as good as it seems to be. But there's plenty of ways this could go wrong.
I don't. GW
go wrong.
Every now and then, GW. I'm reminded how they've still got a long way to go. There are certain people doing certain jobs in GW, and I'm like, why? Why have you not employed the person who's best to do that job rather than that person? Like, you've employed from within the company. That's great, wonderful. I'd much rather you've just gone out and got the best person who does job X and then taught them some Warhammer, even if they need to know anything about it, because they might not. But if they, like, the Lore Masters videos should be their bread and butter. Like that would be like them releasing a book which just, tears up all the lore before it, a novel. Yeah. That should be overseen and everything else. And I would be extremely disappointed if they got something like that wrong, because they've got all the resources there. And I think they talk about it as well. Like, they've got Black Library there. They can go and talk to Nick Kine, or whoever's in charge of like the repository of information they have there. You only have to look around the company at the amount of people who are still there from when this stuff was written. Like Gav Thorpe, like, you're not going to tell me that Gav Thorpe isn't going to be on hand at various points, like, and he knows most of it as well. Not necessarily details, but he'll know
as reflected on it as well. As reflected on the nature of it, just the nature of what the process, the writing process they've had to go through.
Yeah, and it's all very well to be able to put out facts, and some of these YouTube videos do that, but facts without context are meaningless for something like this. And it's only when, if you go back and if you've listened to the video, the interviews we've had with Gav or ADB and John, particularly those three, like, they understand Warhammer. Like,
understand what it could be and what it could mean to people.
Yeah, as well. Anyway, so that's cool. And then there are what we have. So there's a Warhammer event at there's a Heresy event at Warhammer World going on.
That's sold out very quickly. From
Do you know what? I saw some people bitching about it online. Do you know why?
Why?
I saw Steve Wren answering someone else. It might have been a different venue, actually. 40 tickets because of social distancing.
Okay. Very restricted. Right, got it.
I think they've added some more tables into Warhammer World now.
Only this week.
Yeah, but it's like really restrictive. But also, there haven't been any events for 18 months. Like, and some
people are
people
going to go nuts for it. Yeah,
people are going to go nuts for it. You know, like, and even if there were 80 events, if you didn't 80 tables and you didn't get a ticket, like I'm sure they would have sold out very quickly. Like, the hall is only so big; they can only have so many people in. We just need to be appreciative of that.
I'm not criticising it, but
no, but
not
some
really.
people
No,
were.
so, okay, fair
And
enough.
I'm like, you know, come
were.
on, like, you missed out, right? And it's the same thing with limited edition
we'd
books.
all be like that. Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Go and bitch and whine about it. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But don't do it online. Oh, I missed out. What's going on here? Well, you missed out. Like, someone else got lucky. Like, it's not like people are buying those tickets and selling them on eBay for double the cost. Like, they're not scalping Warhammer World tickets, are they? So,
can you imagine when we get to that? Can you imagine when we get to that point?
Maybe we should do it. Maybe we should buy out 20 tickets each.
Wow.
Could you imagine?
Wow.
Anyway, yeah.
You heard it here first.
You know, so, it's just like, come on.
But it's good. It's good that it was good that it was popular.
Well, it's good they put one on.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't last year of events. They didn't have a Heresy event. What's interesting is it's a tournament, which
match play game.
Yeah, which. So we talked about this. I'm not 100% sure now whether they've just set an expectation with that more than it leading into, who knows, whatever. We'll soon find out. But to actually put on a Heresy tournament is an interesting idea. I think they've done that. I think they've basically just ported over the other tournament things. And
I think it's just a way of organising games. Yeah, I agree. I think it's just a way of organising games. That's perhaps, as you say, is a way of grouping people together, and as you say, porting over a set of predefined system, rather than the more complex having to run a narrative event.
There's no restrictions on there. Basically, you can use a Leviathan or Force Sword chart, and you can use all the publications, official publications. Someone pointed out that it doesn't say the FAQ, but the FAQ, an errata changes the book, doesn't it? So if I'm reading book 9 and there's an errata, well, that errata has changed to book 9. Therefore, I'm still using book 9. So it would have been nice if they said all relevant FAQ and errata on there. But I would say read that as
you're assumed to be using the latest version of that book, of that publication.
Yeah. So I think that's a pretty sensible thing in that respect. But there could be some nasty armies in there. There could be some dull armies in there, like people bringing a Titan and a few bits around them and stuff. but it's a tournament. And at the end of the day, when you want to know whatever an event calls itself, when you want to know what kind of event you're going to, look at what the awards are. And this one says best general, first, second, and third. Best painted army, favourite opponent. So best general, and it's a 3-1-0. So the prize, the 3 of the prizes are for how well you do on the table.
Okay, yeah.
So it's a tournament. So you can't moan when people bring their kicking boots.
Yeah.
Well, you can moan, but you'll be wrong because that's what the event is at the end of the day. Interesting to see that they've got quite a nice document, actually. I won't go too much into it, but there's things on timings in there and stuff where they've obviously had issues in 40k events down in the past with timings. And people being late will be got points, which I quite like. Because and there's bits in there about expecting to finish games and stuff like that. But tournament. It'll be interesting to see what kind of goes on there. I can't even remember when it is, to be honest. November, or is it October?
It's October. It's quite soon, actually. October. It's back end of October, I think.
Cool. So that's probably might be before we have any release information. We'll see. Well,
because they announced today that there's going to be Gen Con reveals.
Yeah, information.
Or previews. Previews, I should say. Nothing Heresy mentioned in that.
No, I'm not surprised, to be honest.
No, I'm not either. I wouldn't be. Well, I don't think that's the forum for it.
No, I think there'll be... it'd be interesting to see what they do, to be fair. Who knows? But I'll keep an eye on that Gen Con thing. You never know what gets put up with the 40k stuff. But
it's always interesting to see. Yeah, I would have thought that'd be good. There was mention of box sets, which I would have assuming that's probably going to be either Warcry, more likely Underworlds. But anyway, yeah, a few things coming up. We haven't had a preview in a while.
No, we haven't. No, it'd be good to have a look at one of them. And then the final. Oh, we didn't mention the Herskell squads in those.
Oh, that was tasty. I liked that.
Heresy.
I loved what they did with that. Yeah.
This is Exemplary Battles. What's it called again? It is Horus Heresy, Exemplary Battles of the Age of Darkness, the Battle of Pluto, Hydra's Devastation.
Yeah.
So this is the first of 3 free online PDF rules campaigns.
Exemplary Battle packs.
Yeah. So this there's a few words from Andy Hoare there, which is basically these are events from the novels, the Heresy books, or the AT books that basically don't deserve their own campaign book. Interesting wording. You can read what you want into that. I don't think it tells you too much, but people will read it how they want. I had a quick flick through it, and it's just a bit of an explanation over Pluto and the
effectively the events of Praetorian of Dawn.
Yeah, and leading up to what do we call it? Yeah, the Solar War. So 3 Zone Mortalis missions, which look interesting. Only had a quick flick through. 4 pages of background, plus the rules for the Huskell squad. So
yes, I thought the addition of rules was a real surprise. I mean, the whole thing was a surprise, but to then have rules for a unit in there, even more surprising and positive. Yes, I thought they were quite cool rules.
Yeah, and this is a squad that you can make. The photos they've taken old photos in the documentation, which is fine, fair enough. You got all those assets, why not reuse them? Mm-hmm. It would be interesting to see if they're one of those units where they say, kind of make them up out of what you've got. I like the rules. 1 wound terminators of Cataphracti.
Mm-hmm. Quite efficiently pointed.
Well, it's an interesting one. A few people thought they were a bit expensive for 1 wound, but when you've got a 3+ invulnerable, because they've all got the Vigil Pattern Storm Shields, I like the fact they put them in Cataphracti, so you're not getting all the benefits from that you could have with Tartarus and the shields and stuff.
Yes.
Implacable Advance, though, it's not bad.
Quite good in a
stubborn.
Quite serious business in a Stone Gauntlet formation.
Yeah, because they've also got, you can take Solar Power Gauntlets as well.
Yeah, their weapon skill starts going scarily high.
Yeah, so the shield wall ability, if an unengaged unit with this special rule has at least 3 models remaining, it gains a bonus of +1 weapon skill in any turn in which the unit has been charged by the enemy. Friendly models and characters joining the squad also benefit from this special rule, so long as at least 3 models of the shield wall special rule still survive. So they can be taken as a so they're 0-1 as an HQ option. And they may also be chosen instead of a Legion command squad as a retinue for any model with a Master of Legion and Legion of Astartes Imperial for this special rule, or the Primarch Rogue or Dawn himself, where they take up a single slot with the model. So you can have them leading an army as a 0-1 HQ slot, which is quite fun, because you'd have to kill them all to kill the Warlord. Might not necessarily be amazingly difficult to do, but I like them. I think it's cool. Again, like 1 wound terminators, the Sergeant doesn't have 2 wounds like the Space Force one does, or some of the others. I'm not going to read too much into that, because who knows what happens down the line with other rules. Just as I say, even if the rules aren't, even if they were a little bit like free rules.
Yeah,
like free content,
completely
keeping it going.
Nicely presented, nice set of rules, nice bit of background, and you get a good little spur to have a go at something. I think, I'm all for it. I very much appreciated it. I thought it was a good move. and wasn't overly
I
complicated.
suspect we might get all 3 of these before any new big thing drops.
It was tempting to think that these were all going to be lead up to a siege type environment, a battle of the solar theatre, something like that, or even specifically a Siege of Terror setting. But actually, I think it's probably going to be wider than that.
Yeah, I think the other 2 battles could be anything within this, and I mean, what it leads to is they could do these at any point. So I'm kind of
Mars feels like an obvious thing. Talon, as you said before.
Yeah, I'm less certain. Like this kind of thing throws up into the air what's happening with books, and stuff
completely.
like that a little bit, because this is the kind of stuff where if we were getting these for the last 10 years in between the books, like the odd 1 or 2, people wouldn't have moaned so much about the wait for books.
Yeah.
Like, so again, who knows? Like, we go down that path. That's it's a whole.
It's got the feeling though of stuff that they'd thrown around ideas and explored things. I thought this is too good. We'd like to get this out there, but we haven't got a vector for it. And there they found something and released it this way.
Yeah, maybe that way, or maybe they thought about putting it into a book and didn't, or maybe they've got a new writer and they've said, right, crack on. Here's your test piece.
Yeah.
Like give us.
Yeah. Could be
400, 500, 1,000 words on the Battle of Pluto, and try and come up with some stuff.
Yeah.
Zone Mortalis missions as well is quite interesting. So, I mean, yeah, it fits, but to have some new Zone Mortalis missions, it's another tool for the arsenal of the event organizer as well.
It's it could be. I mean, that's why I thought it was going to be a run up to something, as a build up to something. I think it could be quite a canny and something we haven't seen before that I can think of, way of a building up to something, rather than, I mean, Warhammer Community has had a tendency to release little articles talking about the background of something when they've been building up to something. I think it was one of the Age of Sigmar big events. What was it? Not Forbidden Power. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Well, they had a lead up to something, and they releasing these sort of little stories, and they'd release articles talking about the background of something. So, something's coming, something's building. Fine, great, and that was effective. It's just, this is interesting. This is cool. This is building some hype. I felt this does even more so, because this gets you encouraging to start building a squad. It starts putting a little force together, playing some games, and then before you know it, you're already in it, and then suddenly something drops. I thought that could be a perfect little.
It could be, as you say, 3. Yeah, you can imagine three of these battles about the build up to the siege, and then dropping the siege.
Would have been brilliant. And I can't think of another occasion where Games Workshop have done that in the time I've.
Not in this way, but it's essentially a mini version of what they've done with 40k in the build up to a new edition.
Yeah, but I think it's better, because I think those are almost too big. I feel like let's have a Psychic Awakening book.
Yeah, people feel like, we've had to buy into this stuff, and then you've got the new edition, whereas this is free.
It's free,
like to see,
but thematic. I think it's quite a cool way of doing it.
Well, and maybe I'd love to see this be done with 40k and Age of Sigmar.
I completely agree. I think it's quite a good model for this kind of thing, where you release it and build hype around a little kind of game system.
Once a quarter getting a little thing like that.
Yeah.
That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
So, and maybe Age of Sigmar and 40k don't need it because of the nature of other releases as much, but to get something for, just a little Aeronautica bit, a little AT kind of piece that's, again, something very small that happens, a throwaway line in a book that you're never going to get around to expanding.
I think certain games lend themselves to it. Heresy is perfect for this kind of thing. Something that I could see some of the others where a unit suddenly becomes almost like too effective or something. Some of the others where it's a slightly more competitive focused, perhaps, or I don't know. There's some more things to balance which become problematic. I think particularly Heresy, Titanicus could lend themselves really well to this stuff.
But you could always have it that it is a specifically non-match play.
That's true. Yes, you could take it out.
You could write in that it is a narrative document only. And you could do that. I just think it would be quite a bit of fun.
I agree with you.
And just the fact that Games Workshop's giving you something free, like looks good, feels good, and just kind of knocks back some of the issues you get, from certain people, like about how GW, this big evil company that just want to earn money. You'll never stop things like that, but it would just help their image a little bit.
Completely.
But yeah, cool. I mean, we've had lots of stuff to talk about. I mean, even without our rambling at the start.
Our signature rambling.
Indeed, it is that show. It's vaguely on topic most of the time. At least we don't go on
I hope so. Yeah.
too much other stuff. Only hearing every now and then. But yeah, I think that'll do. I'll talk about my trip up to Company of Legends and the trials and tribulations of the Daemons separately. Anything else you want to add before we?
No, well, as you say, there's always, you can go on for forever with these things, but I think that's a sum up of where we are, and it's all proving quite exciting. There's plenty to talk about, where we've had a period or periods not too distant past where we've been not quite sure what we were going to be talking about next, and now there's loads. So yeah, I'm all for it. Long may that continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully another good Legion Dispatch article was maybe something a bit different again would be lovely. Rather than, don't get me wrong, if it's another set of Praetors, that's cool, that's fine. But if it's something else, and they just keep us on our toes a little bit, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
And just the other little bits and pieces. And I'll tell you what. So we had the Fall of Melos event going on in Manchester this weekend. Obviously, I was at Company of Legends. We had the Greetings from the Warp doing their Heresy event. There's we got LGT coming up. There are Greetings doing their other one. Like, all of a sudden, there's a lot of Heresy, as you say, Heresy, not just hobby being done, but games being played, tables being showed off. I saw a picture of a raised kind of like part of the corner of the battlefield was raised, and there were the Spinkler launchers, the what tanks are they called now? Arbiters. Legion
Arquitor, yeah.
Arquitor, yeah, with the Spinkler launchers,
Something like
and it's just like they look fantastic. Just forget sometimes how cool stuff looks on the table when you're playing, and it all helps. Really, wonderful really stuff. Does. We should call it there, my friend.
We should. We'll come back with even more next time.
Indeed. No worries. Take it
easy. Good speaking
to
you, buddy. Good speaking. Bye-bye.
Okie dokie, let's try and do a little look back at the Company of Legends weekend, kind of a companion piece to the piece I did about my Daemons, and we'll see how it goes. Some people said they enjoyed it, so fingers crossed you can enjoy this as well. It might be a bit bitty, but I'm going to give it my best shot. It's been a couple of weeks since I went up there as well, so the memory's a little bit fuzzy on a couple of details, I'm sure. But we'll try and go through things and give an idea of whether the list did the kind of things I expected it to, and how it works in relation to other people's lists, and how I'd approach things again, I suppose. A little bit of all of that anyway. First things first, I spent, things are kind of busy, or hectic is probably a better word. They certainly were the week before going up to the event, and I was desperately trying to get things painted. Most importantly, this led to me packing late night, trying to get everything ready, having a quick scan through to make sure I've got everything, because there's always something you forget, isn't there? So making sure I had chargers and all the paperwork I needed, all the books I needed to be able to play, all those little bits and pieces that you kind of add up. There's not a huge amount, but they add up. Upon getting to Durham, I did notice that I'd forgotten a model, and it's one of those crazy, stupid situations where I had two models that could be used, and looked in the box and thought, oh yes, I'm using the other one, that's fine, and didn't check to see if that one was there. So my list did change. Rather than having the two Greater Ruin Storm beasts, I ended up having to obviously take that out, and then also take out one of the Ruinstorm Demon Chosen, and I can't remember what else I did, but I swapped some other stuff around. So I ended up with a Ruinstorm Demon Lord with 2 Demon Brutes, 1 Chosen, 3 units of 10 Lesser Demons, 2 the Beasts, 1 unit of Beasts, 2 units of 5 Lesser Demons with the Jump Pack rule, 2 units of Brutes, 2 Shrikes, 1 Ruinstorm Demon Behemoth, and another Demon Behemoth. So yeah, a bit of a change. And yes, right. I took both the greater beast out and put the extra behemoth. That's right. Generally, after my practice game, those Runestorm beasts, they're all right. But if someone's got decent, anywhere half decent ability to take on high toughness things or vehicles, then they don't tend to last that long. But they're 135 points as I had them equipped, so kind of throwaway in a way. But if they're never achieving anything, then what's the point of them being there in the first place? Maybe a bit of an argument on that. So either way, that was the list that I ended up taking. So the lesson we learned there anyway is go through your list model by model, never assume anything, because we know what assuming does. All fun, all of a bit of a panic when I get there, but we managed to get around that. Anyway, so Saturday morning we're lined up. I'm playing as a traitor, and we are given random pairings for the mission. We're playing Company of Legends' narrative missions, narrative setup. That was a whole thing about, well, might get into it later, about calling out opponents, trying to call out opponents that are doing better than you, which was a nice touch, I feel. And then the table scenery is not designed to be fair. It's not repeated across tables. Some tables have decent amount of scenery, some have much less. There's the forest board I played on. It was first game actually. Was it against Chris? Yeah, it might have been first game. And basically, it's supposed to represent you playing in a deep forest, and everything gets a 5-up cover save, which they probably need to write down on the table. Actually, it's not a bad idea of putting something on the table to tell you what that table rules are, if there are any specific ones, because I don't think we played it that way, which wouldn't have made a huge amount of difference with the nature of the way my army works, having the 5-up save anyway, and then almost all my damage being dealt in combat. But you never know, for other people it might make a big difference in their games. So game 1, randomly drawn against Chris Carr. They had Mechanicum. This is rather nice. I didn't take many pictures of the weekend, but you can go onto Edge of Empire's Facebook page, and there's lots of photos from across the weekend. Chris had a Skaven themed Mechanicum army, lots of different rats equipped in different ways to represent that. I'm just going to bring up their army list here. Where are we? They had a Magos Prime with a Machinator Array, Order of Techno, Arcana Ordinator, a Bayon, Augury Scanner, Cortex Controller, Cyber Familiar, Cyber Ocularis ×3, Rogue Grenades, Photon Thrusters, Mastercrafted Power Axe, Architect Crystal. There's a Major Dominus in there with a few bits and pieces, a Secretary Axiarch. Troops, we had 20 Adseculus Covenant with all the Feel No Pain and immune to Fear and all that. 3 Castellax with more bolt cannons, which I know some people question, but although I like the ones with the lance weapon on top, I think there are other ways to do it. Strength 7 Lance isn't that reliable. They're good, don't get me wrong. I don't necessarily think the Castellax have to be that way. I think the Mortar Bolt Cannons are a really good one. And then we got a 10-person, a 10 hoplite phalanx, a 20 peltas phalanx, 2 of those. So with the radium carbines. So radium carbines are, if they do a 6 to wound, they do another additional wound, I think it is. And the hoplite phalanx are the ones that come in with haywire normally, which is a bit of a shame for him on that front. Shame for them on that front. The Tarantula Sentry Gun Battery with which can be dropped in. Terex pattern assault drill for the hoplite phalanx. 4 Vorax with an Iron cleanser in there, which is quite a nice little thing, and a Thanatar class Synsis. I can never remember how it's pronounced. And that one is the one with the plasma, if I remember correctly. Yeah, that's the one that fires the smaller multiple plasma shots out, which I really like. I think Thanatars are good, but a little bit overrated. The Siege Automata one's the classic one. You can play around it if it's going to be good against you. But I really like that one. But what we've got here for an army is quite a... It's not compact per se. There's not a huge amount there. Things like, so if Chris was playing against a big... there's a big tank on the board that specifically needed to be dealt with, or a knight or something like that, then the Terex pattern assault drill can come up, and the hoplites can come out, and they can deal with it. And that is one threat dead. They can choose the biggest thing and kill it. The radium carbines can put a lot of wounds down. They're quite good for that. Having the augury scanners in is nice over the board. What else have we got? The Vorax are quite... I like Vorax a lot. I think they're quite cool. And Castellax are always good. The game... So I'm trying to remember exactly how it went now, because it's been a while. I think Chris went first. And before that, I should probably go into the mission. So this mission... essentially, I went through the background in the previous show, but the traitors are up to something sneaky, and the loyalists are trying to work out what before things get too bad for them. And this is the road to New Bryden. So trying to remember exactly what it was, but essentially we're going to meet as a counter-attack here from the loyalists, or we're playing using the counter-attack style mission. So I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the mission set up as it is. So we had a hunted and hunter role with one primary objective and in each table quarter. We rolled, I was the hunter, and I was hunting the Mechanicum. So they had to deploy in their quarter 9 inches away from the table centre. And they could only deploy troops and heavy supports allowed with dedicated transports. So for Chris, this meant the Tarantula wasn't going to deploy anyway. The Tarantula was fine. The Vorax, the only things, but then they can come on and scout anyway. So that's what they did. I actually think I went. Yeah, I think Chris went first and stepped forwards. There's nothing that can be done. Basically, the opponent deploys in the other table quarter, irrelevant for Daemons. I should probably say as well, the hunted player could start with units in reserve, and any of the hunted player's units on the start of the battlefield have the stealth special rule until they move, run, or charge. Which I'm not sure we knew about, to be honest. Sometimes it can be the issue when you've got new missions that you deploy on players. It's always that hard balance of trying to get it right between players knowing all the rules and all that. This is all laid out, whether we look past it or not. Whether Chris would have used it or not, I don't know. But again, I don't think it would have mattered that much, because the nature of the stealth means it's only a few shooting attacks, and there are only a few shooting attacks that really play into that. So it's fairly irrelevant in our setup, at least. The problems. So I won this game, and I won this fairly convincingly. certain aspects of Chris's army, what works quite well against me are the peltasts with the radium carbines. This means there's a lot of shots coming out, and if you roll well, that's a lot more damage coming out, and it's on 6s, so that's fine. That all helps. That's really good, and had it been my original list, would have been even better. But the Hoplite Phalanx doesn't really scare me at all. Doesn't do a great deal. The Terrax doesn't do anything once it's up. That's all about the payload. The Vorax can be quite good against the right target. And the characters, none of them are really combat-y. The Castellax can cause a problem, but in a weird way, they work a little bit like Daemons. Once they've charged, they haven't got many attacks, and it's their toughness which really helps them out. And it means they're winning combats by 1 or 2 normally. Not so the case here. And essentially, what happened was I came down turn 1. I got shot because of the augury scanners, but looking at the board, I've got 2 creatures who, for the first 2 turns, are toughness 8, and the strength of the radium guns means they're not hurting creatures that are toughness 8. So I can put those 2 big boys down right in front of the enemy and know that they're going to make it in, because there's not enough other shots around that are big enough to cause problems. So my Runestorm Behemoths can relatively safely drop down, and then it's a case of trying to deal with them. That's fine. If I lose a huge amount of other stuff, that's all right. Which I didn't. I made sure that when I came down, I was staying within range of my rerolls, because they're hell of a helpful in that respect. And the way deployment was, I didn't expect Chris to come charging at me and try and stop me being able to deploy. I'm not sure they had the speed to be able to do that anyway, which allowed me to push my rift markers quite close it can't be within 12 anyway, but to push right up there to make sure I had the opportunity to come in second turn. And second turn I made about 8 charges into the army, and once you do that with an army like this, the game's pretty much over. The Castellax took a little while to go down. The Vorax, when they came in on the flank, took a little while to go down, but again there was one of my bigger beasts was over there. Might have been one of my big behemoths, actually. I'm trying to remember for the life of me. But Hoplites, Peltasts, they can't stand up to that. I think, I'm trying to remember what the Thanatar did. The Thanatar run into a behemoth, or was it my main dude? It was one of the 2, and held me up for a couple of rounds. But again, Thanatar's not doing a lot in combat after the turn it charges. Even with the improved initiative, Thanatars are great. They're really cool, and they do a good job on the battlefield. It's one of those things. It's like when we used to play Warhammer Fantasy. Everyone would complain. If you're a dwarf player, or an Empire player, everyone would complain about your cannons, and yet every Empire and Dwarf player would complain about their own cannons. Thanatars feel a little bit like that, so you could say that they're well pointed in that respect, and they do. They play in the right way, because both sides complain about them. So it's not that they're completely over the top. If you're playing against one, it's just one of those things. Make sure you spread out, limit what they can do to you. A bit different with this version, but with the Siege Automata one, definitely you can make sure if they're only killing 3 or 4 models a turn, and that's not doing a lot to you. But it was a really good game against Chris. As I say, it was once those charges went in. Now, I don't think Chris had played against Demons, and this is kind of a feature of the weekend. Those that don't play against Demons, sometimes you need to play that game to just understand it and see what happens, because it's all very well someone talking through it. And in fact, when we get onto game 4, we see examples of someone who has played, who's competent and played against Demons, because being both is also an advantage as well. But if you're competent and haven't played against demons and haven't studied them, you've got similar issues anyway. So had Chris had what I potentially would have done, Chris had his 20 Ad Secularis Covenant, and they were basically a bodyguard for his Magos Prime. And that's cool. A lot of games I do exactly the same thing. In this game, I potentially would have put them with maybe by itself, actually, because I've only got the Shrikes that can fly over, and they can't charge you the turn they come in, and if they're flying high, they can't charge you for a turn either because they've got to come down first. So you could have the Magos Prime by itself, and then as soon as you're under threat, jump into a unit if you want to. And that also spreads out your either their photon thruster shots or their orbital bombardment shots to different targets as well. So it gives you options there, which will be really good. But your Ad Secularis Covenant in this game are going to do very little. And that's fine. A lot of the time they're just there to take the wounds. But because I can't reach the Magos Prime, I can only do the damage in combat. You don't need those wounds until combat. So what that unit could be better used for is stringing out in a line 20 models wide with a big 2-inch gap between them across the front of the army. And then, knowing Chris was going first, you could take that risk to then use the assault drill, and the hoplites are also not going to do a great deal. So alongside those Ad Secularis Covenant, they could portion off part of the board space. So then what I'm looking at turn 1 is I'm coming in. Turn 2, you can then just readjust as needed. And you can stop almost all of my army being able to charge in my turn 2. So we're 4 rounds into the game, and the demon player will be charging the Covenant. I can't remember how many points it is. It's not a huge amount, even with the Revenant Alchemistry and Rite of Pure Thought. So then the demon player is doing nothing that turn because, again, can't shoot stuff I'm not going to charge. So if my big stuff that's got the best shots wants to shoot, a Magos Prime by itself or something like that, which I can't instant kill, and it's only AP3 as a weapon anyway, and with the rolls I've made all weekend for my Rift Barbs, it's just fairly irrelevant. At best of times, you can keep them that bit safer even longer, and then you can line up your Castellax behind, and your Peltas can be lined up to fire their radium carbines through, and your Vorax potentially coming on there as well. This means it's only turn 3 that I'm actually getting into the units behind, but by then, hopefully, okay, you've lost the first turn of shooting because I've got nothing on the board, but actually, and even if you use augury scanners to intercept, then you're not shooting in your own turn, but then you can use those turns to then reposition and run maybe. I know the Covenant can't, but the other units potentially could withdraw or move around to the side and split troops up. There are things you could do in that respect. Understanding this is a gamey way, like some people listen to this and might be like, well, that's all very well, but I play for the fun of it. Cool, that's fine. It's not a problem. You can still, play the game and have fun with it as well. So I think potentially if Chris had done that, 20 Covenant across the front, using the assault drill and the hoplites to cover in any gaps, and maybe even the tarantula just dropping it down in a way potentially. I know it's a kill point, or in this match it would have given up first blood potentially, but it's one point. Like when you're trying to win the game, what were the primary objectives here? Were the objectives? So yeah, 3 points for each objective. I mean, it's at the end of the game. So my attitude to this was go and kill stuff. Then I've got a couple of fast things that can run onto those objectives if needed, or if the enemy's dead, I can just stand on one. So that's how I'm looking at it. So say that works, for instance, you've got 2 or 3 rounds of firing with the Peltasts, probably 2, before I'm getting into one of them, because again, once we've got to that turn 3 where I'm then can make more charges, you should be then working out, well, I'd be charging something with my Castellax to hold them in place, hoping that the Vorax could do the same, so you could pin at least 2 units in place and 2 units that are going to cause you problems, knowing that in turn 3 my demons are back down to their normal strength and toughness, so you can charge. And also knowing that my units of 10 lesser demons who have rending, they've got 40 attacks on the charge, but when they're charged, they've only got 20. And you kill 3, they've only got 14, right? And 14 attacks at weapon skill 4 with rending. It's not stunning. Like, don't get me wrong, it's good, but it's not. If your Castellax going in, I'm winning you on 60, so I need I need rends. With 14, I'm getting two wounds through. And Castellax on the charge, you're going to be doing some damage. You're high strength as well, so you're probably going to win that combat. Take another few wounds off. You might kill 3 or 4. All of a sudden, there's only a handful left, and then maybe you can deal with them. And then I also have to think, shoot, if I have a bad turn next turn, I need to make sure this Castellax is not there. So I then have to put something bigger into the Castellax, and then going into turn 4, you get to shoot something else or what have you. Now, I'm not saying it will definitely work, but I think that's the way I would have played this. And I would have, I think that's the way I would have played it, and then try and broke out from there. Because once you've killed a few of the lesser demons, then it's harder for the demon player running out of units. Yes, those units are tough and whatever, but once you've got, if you can keep one of your units with radium carbines alive for 4 turns, then you're putting out a lot of wounds because of the nature of the beast. So you can get down. Now, as I say, it's not easy. It is difficult, but I think that's what I would have done. It was a hard matchup for Chris. It was especially hard because it was the first game, and the mission, allowed me to not worry too much about the mission until the end of the game. But it was a fantastic game. It's a really cool looking army. I think I actually voted for it as my favourite army because it's well executed, but it's also so different. There was had the Bone Ripper model from Bone Ripper and Thanquil and Bone Ripper as the Thanatar, and lots of Storm Vermin, I think, were in there as another Skaven units. Really enjoyed playing against it. It was fantastic stuff. Now, the traitors, I can't remember if it was a draw. Was it a draw the first round? Put it this way, the traitors didn't have a great weekend, and they never do at Company of Legends. It turns out that even me switching sides can't help that. Mission 2, we moved on to a mission called The Prophets of War. So I was playing John McKenny, I think, in this one with his Iron Hands, which were really cool. This had D3 plus 2 objectives. I think we had 5 on the table, at least 4, but I also had a secret objective that I had to put down, which no, I never spoke to anyone about afterwards, but basically I had to stop any model getting, if an enemy model touched it, I lost the objective. I can't remember what we got for it. I think we got extra resource points for it. So I put that right in the middle of the table, right in the middle of my rift barbs. My rift markers. And I did that because this one is all about scoring points on the, where are we? Yeah, at the end of your opponent's turn, you earn 1 victory point for each primary objective you control. Now, I didn't necessarily think about objective placement all the way through, and ended up shoving some quite far away from the Iron Hands army, thinking that's all right, they'll never get there. Unfortunately, what this did was actually make it all difficult for me, because a couple of turns in, I was like, oh, shoot, I didn't think this through. Let's go through John's list, because that will kind of explain what happened. So we had Iron Father Ortec Moore and a Master of Signals. This is HQs. We had an Apothecary, a Dreadnought with a Flamestorm Cannon and a Chain Fist and a Graviton Gun, 5 Gorgon Terminators in a Land Raider Phobos, 3 Quad Launcher Sport Batteries with Shadow Cells, a Reconnaissance Squad, 5 dudes, 2 Tacs, a Sabre, a heavy support, and the Sabre had the Neutron Blaster and some Sabre missiles. A 10-man heavy support Volkite Culverin unit, which immediately screams alarms. A Leviathan Siege Dreadnought with, what did he have? Grav, Flux, Bombard, Phosphex Discharger, and a Siege Drill in a Dreadnought drop pod, and an Arcus with a Neutron Flux Warhead, Sky Spear Warheads. So I forgot that he could infiltrate. I can't remember where that comes from. Was that? Does he get that generally? So yeah, he could infiltrate his couple of his squads. And again, we were playing a quarters table edge on this one, and variable game length. And what this meant was, I put my rift markers down. I think I could only fit 2 in because of the amount of objectives, and I concentrated on trying to get into his table quarter, foolishly forgetting that I'd put objective markers right on the other side of the table, which he infiltrated onto and started to score points. So essentially, turn 3 onwards, I was like, I'm going to lose this unless I can race back and get in there. And he had his unit of scouts was sat on one behind his line of quad launchers, and his Volkite Culverins were on a piece of terrain that I couldn't get on. I had to kill a model to be able to get up to and reach. And well, I told you how bad rift barbs are. I think I killed a model on turn 5 with rift barbs. It was that good. He made a couple of cover saves, but I just couldn't hit or couldn't wound. It was absolutely terrible. One thing to note about this mission: there was no clear 9-inch area in the middle of the table, so it was 2 quarters, and you could deploy. Models could end up deploying 2 inches apart. I'm not a fan of that. I think even the 9-inch clear center, that's fine on these quartered missions, because it's only 1 unit or 2 units you can get on the edge of that. And if someone wants to give up 6 inches of their table quarter, that's generally fine, just as long as the terrain's in the right place. I don't like any mission where the first-hand charges are a possibility. And there's a reason that, in general, 24 inches is left between deployments. As I say, I think if you want 18 inches, but it's a very limited 18-inch range, then that is acceptable. But 24 for me is the thing. It didn't come into this game too much, but it can cause for games to be over really quickly, and then kind of sometimes they can drag on, and it can leave a bit of a bitter taste. So yeah, I'm not a massive fan of that, but it's fair enough. They were trying something a bit different. So yeah, these Volkite Culverins sat on this nice piece of terrain with the what do we call them? My mind's gone. The quad launcher batteries behind them. The Gorgon Terminator squad zoomed out onto an objective turn 1. I got to go first, I will say that. So the Dreadnought pushed forwards. The reconnaissance squad sat on objective. As I said, the Sabre tank didn't get to do anything. It was my target number 1. When I came out of my rift markers, I'd lined up about 5 or 6 rift barbs on it and needed most of them to kill it. I think I might have taken a point off a Dreadnought. No, I didn't. Don't even think I did that. I didn't do a great deal else. But turn 1, I came out and killed. Oh no, it wasn't the Sabre, was it? It was the Sabre. Yeah, failed to come on for turns. It was the Arcus I killed turn 1. Got that off the table. He did try to shoot me as I came in, but he was waiting there to try and deal with me. But yeah, decided to get rid of that turn 1. And this game essentially revolved around the Volkite Culverin squad absolutely ruining a unit a turn of lesser demons, just pummeling them till there weren't many left, and then running away. And the main feature was then me moving forwards and then realising I had to run all the way backwards to try and get these 2 units that were going to rack up points, and I just about did it. I think the big moments were the Leviathan came down, shot some stuff up, and I charged it with some lesser demons and some beasts, I think, maybe as well. And experience says I've got a half decent chance of doing some damage on it with 40 attacks with rending. But if I get into protracted combat, it becomes very difficult. If it gets into later turns, I can't actually hurt it. So the big thing for me was I actually got through it with some shooting and then some combat, and I sent my little 5-man unit dudes, lesser demon units in with the jump packs and swapping all their attacks with strength 1 attacks for initiative 1 strength times 2 attacks with armor bane. And I think it was actually in the second round or whatever. I think it might have been one of them that actually did it. There weren't many left at the time, because if I'd held up on that Leviathan for another turn, it was holding up 3 units or something like that, and I would have struggled to get across to deal with his other models. My Demon Lord went and absolutely ruined the Dreadnought, tore that to pieces, and then decided to push on towards his deployment zone, realised that he had to go back and try and push towards the troops behind him, realised that he wasn't then needed or wouldn't get there in time, and then tried to come back into the middle of the board and did very little. But the big beasts coming really really well again, in one of them pushing forwards to get into the quad launcher batteries and absorbing that fire, because first turn it's a hard choice for John, I think, knowing what to shoot. There's a lot that needs to be shot, and I rolled, it should be said, I think I rolled fairly well both first games for the reserves, and that makes a big difference. Like first game, I think everything came in turn 1. Second game, there were a couple of things that didn't, but when you've got everything pushing there, when something's held back that turn, all of a sudden you're not charging with, say it's one of the behemoths until turn 3. I'm only, you do affect the game and control of the board and all that, but I'm only able to kill things for 3 turns. It's less pressure as well, so that target choice becomes easier for the opponent, things like that. So both my first round, 2-round opponents may be a little bit unlucky with how well I rolled on the reserves rolls, but that's reserves rolls. And it's a strange game, this one. I don't think John did anything wrong. I think he's got quite a small static army. And me going first means I can get out and be ready. He didn't have the opportunity to come and stop me coming at him. Whether he could or not, I don't know. But maybe it would have allowed John to get into range of maybe my less squishy things with like his dreadnought, something like that. So there's a possibility on that front, and it allowed him to get on the board earlier with his units, his troops units, which may have split my forces up a bit more and caused a few more problems. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. But it was a smallish, static army, which again, I just weathered the storm on. I think the Volkite Culverin squad did very well. Again, knowing it's there, trying to make the most of those reroll saves with the rift markers, things like that. I think potentially, actually looking back on it, maybe he could have deployed the objectives a little bit more difficult for me, knowing that he was going to be defending a corner and maybe spreading out the two that were far away from everyone. They could have been spread out a little bit more, which would have made it harder for me to cover that ground. But the problem is, once you've got, apart from his Volkite squad, if I've got 10 lesser demons sat on an objective, it takes a lot to shift them. So, and you have to shift every single one of them as well. So that's a big ask as well. But it was a good fun game. I just honestly, I don't know how many rift barbs I fired at basically a 3-up armor heavy support squad, and just not getting anything through till like turn 5. It was absolutely ridiculous. But that's all part of the fun, isn't it? It's all good. Cracking game against Sean. Would like to play him again at some point. Game 3, I think we drew the first set of missions, and then the train lost the second set. As we moved on to turn 3, where focus turned to Irontown, where the Iron Warriors were up to no good. Rolled off on deployment. What was deployment in this one? Good old-fashioned Dawn of War, which is always good. And we had victory points based on killing. So 1 victory point for each enemy unit destroyed. 2, and instead you get 2 for HQ or elite units destroyed, and 2 victory points for controlling the primary objective marker, and slay the warlord for D3. And the trade player decides who will deploy first and second. Not a fan of. Well, it's a tricky one. I'm not a fan of giving the choice. I think maybe you can. I understand why they do it. And there's a kind of, it's not a balancing mechanism, but you don't want one side to get steamrolled and them to get all the advantages in a campaign. And that's always a problem. So there's an understandable element of doing something like this. Having the choice of going first or second is quite a big thing. I think what maybe I would do in the future is having the traitor player having the choice or choosing to go first or second, like one or the other. So you either roll, unless the traitor, say it's deploy first, unless the traitor player decides to deploy first, roll off. Because for some armies, deploying second becomes a really big thing. So to have that much control, I appreciate that going the other way, it might not seem any better, but it does tailor things a little bit. I'm not a massive fan of giving choice of first turn to one person without a roll. This happens before deployment, so that's fine. That's not a problem. Maybe it's not as much of an issue as I think it is, but I chose to go first. I say sometimes I think against Demons it can be a good idea to go first and to push them back. And again, I don't think Andy had played against Demons. I think he understood kind of what they could do, but again, playing against them is a different thing. What was in his army? Should we go through that? He had an Archimagos Prime, a couple of Cyber Ocularis, Gene Skin Jetpack, Ordinator, Mastercrafted Photon Thruster, 3 units of 5 Thalax, 1 with the Photon Thruster, 2 with 2 Plasma Fusils. He had an Avengers Strike Fighter, a cohort of 6 Ursarax. Then he had a Krios Venator Tank Destroyer, times 2, so he had 2 separate units of those, and then 5 Myrmidon Destructors in a Triorus Armoured Conveyor. And then a Lord of War joined him, which was a Cerastus Knight Atropos with Ocular Augmetics. Now, in this game, I think I got a couple of rules wrong in this game for my models. I was very tired, and I'll go into that later. But I don't think it changed the game at all. So, essentially because I ended up dealing with the Atropos, but not the way I thought I was going to. So he spread his army out. Now, the key thing with a mechanical army like this is those Thalax should be really maneuverable, and you should be able to stand your distance. The problem with a mechanical army like this against Demons is you don't have a huge amount of shots. Now, the Myrmidon Destructors with radiation engines are really good because they get past all your toughness. They are not bothered about that at all, and that caused massive problems for me. Turn 1. It's a bit of a worry. The Venators are fine. They can, they're a lot. They essentially become a lot of points for a 4-shot gun against a big thing, which can shrug them off. But they're still very cool. I say the Thalax can be annoying, but again, there's not a huge amount of shots coming out here, so it's not a withering fire to destroy something. With the Ursarax can be deadly because They had 6 power fists, 4 lightning claws. So 4 lightning claws, 4 power fists, 2 lightning claws, 6 of them. Get them the right way around, because they're doubling out stuff, because they're pretty tough, and they can get that jump on as well. But I went first, and I thought, screw it, I want to put a behemoth at the destructors. If I can deal with that, then we can cause some problems. Turns out, with a little bit of lucky rolling, Myrmidons absolutely will ruin the behemoths. The demons, the behemoths do have a rule where poison weapons can only wound them on 6s, but irradiation engines aren't. Poison, they got flesh pain. So ignore that, you're winning them on 2s, and the first one went down. And this one I rolled much more mixed on my reserve rolls, so the second one didn't come in for a couple of turns. And by that point, the destructors had ripped apart plenty of lesser demons as well. Really going through them. So I was trying to make the most use of my rift markers over there again, staying within range and then only running out if I had to. They did have to move forwards. Essentially, how I got them in the end was with the second behemoth, but having it charge from point of which I had the reroll saves. So weathered the storm. I can't remember if I had to finish them off with something else as well, because they're meaty in combat as well. But they were the big threat. That and the Atropos. And the Atropos came flying in. Again, turn 2, I made a lot of charges, and I made some long charges as well. Not hugely long, but 9s, 10s. There was a few of them, which meant I caught Thalax units and held them in place. And then, as can happen with Mechanicum, a couple of failed stubborn rolls and they're gone. And they're strong, at least, the Thalax, so they are wounding on decent numbers. But once you've caught them, and then you're really restricting what they can do. Say in an army that doesn't have a huge amount of shots anyway, that all hurts. Then failing in stubborns and running off and not rallying or whatever just rubs it in. He lost his major prime with them. There was a lot of points when the strike fire came on and did okay. I think it survived. Did it survive all the way to the end? Because my wrist barbs are terrible and my strikes are terrible. But that's just how they roll. The Venators pinking off wounds. The Knight Atropos. Turn 2, I made a lot of charges. Failed to make one with my HQ model, my Ruinstorm Demon Lord. And the Atropos came in, rolled a 6, and took him off. That's what Destroyer will do to you. The one thing my Shrike did well was, I'm pretty sure it was my Shrike, and then came in on the next turn, and I kept plinking away wounds, and the swapped all the attacks out, I think. I'm trying to remember exactly how the Atropos went down. I think I might have swapped all the attacks out of my Shrike and hit it in combat. Luckily, it blew up. Didn't take anything with it as it blew up. Which again, when you're using knights, people, you have to be wary of the destroyer table and rolling the 6s. You have to be wary of when it blows up the 6, but you just have to accept it's a 1 in 6 chance. The rest of the time, it actually doesn't do a huge amount. The destroyer table. It's fine in combat with things, but I'm mainly talking about the stomps and the blowing up. But and once you got the Atropos, and that was the big thing, because by that point I'd made the other charges, and then it was a case of just how long the game's going to take for me to win. And he took it in a great spirit, and I had a good fun game. So it was almost a shame that I got quite as many charges off as possible as I did. Again, there's nothing in the list. There's no way for Andy to push me back, which is fair. There's not a huge amount of armies that can really do it. The next army did, but then also because we didn't roll, there was never an opportunity either. So it's kind of irrelevant whether unless he had actual scouts out there. Even then, they can't deploy too close. There's nothing to stop it. Had he been able to move up maybe with the Destructors, and then had the Ocularis out there and stuff, a very different threat. It's a fun game. It was late night. Well, it wasn't late. It was long Saturday, but I really enjoyed it. I'd again love to play Andy again another time and see what happens, particularly once he's now played against Daemons and see what they can do. I don't necessarily think he did anything majorly wrong, but it's just a bit of an uphill battle, I think, on that front. Right, mission 4, Hill 112. We lost again. The Traitors lost that round again. I can't remember. I think we might have won one somewhere. Maybe it was that one. I don't know. It's fairly relevant. We had D3 plus 2 objective markers on this one. We're talking again about a good old-fashioned slobber knocker end tables. This had secret objectives for the War Master's forces. So the Traitors had there were missions, was 3 points for each primary objective at the end of the game, and 1 victory point for each opposing unit that has been completely destroyed. So I've got a lot of units, so that's actually not a great thing sometimes for me. And then we rolled off for a secret mission. So one of them was like, if you rolled a number and you either, if you're dedicated to a god or if you're undivided, you get that number. So mine would be 8 for Khorne, and if I get 8 victory points, then I would win the game. Like if I was exactly on 8, which is very manageable. If you know how many victory points you need and you've got an army that's combat, you can go and kill 8 things and just stop. Or it's potentially manageable depending on how combats work out, things like that. But I didn't get that. I got, if I killed the enemy HQ, I got like 5 victory points, I think it was. But all my, or 3, but each primary objective was only 1 victory point. So I went from being able to sit on 2 or 3 of those objectives for 3 points each down to 1 point. And I really had to slay the Warlord because it's not easy for me to get first blood. Line break is possible, which were the other 2 in play. So what happened here was I'd won 3 games and fairly convincingly on a few of them. So my renown or infamy was high, and I got challenged. I was considering challenging anyway if we were lower Adam Owens, because he had a really interesting Talons of the Emperor army, and I thought it would be a good battle. I thought I could win it. Unfortunately, as soon as I looked at the mission, in fact, I can tell you, because they are on here, 6 victory points if you slay the Warlord and 1 victory point otherwise. So I had, what else did I have? Number 1 would be control all the primary objectives at the start of the turn. If you do that any turn, you win the game automatically. And if you run out of units basically to be able to do it, you lose the game automatically. 3 points for each secondary objective they achieve. That would have been good for me. I would have been able to play that. I would possibly not fair, but there we go. 5 victory points for each objective they control in their table half, and 1 in the opponent's. There were different things in there. Essentially, any other mission, I think I stood a chance. The problem with this mission was I then absolutely needed to win the game. I had to kill his HQ. And you'll see in a second why that was a problem. So Adam bought HQ's Janisha Kroll as Warlord, Constantine Valdor, and Excruciatus Cadre of Sisters of Silence with State Crossbows, 3 Aquilon Terminators, 1 Contemptor Achilles Dreadnought, 4 Etaron Guard with their Paragon Blades and Solar Powered Gauntlets and Presidium Shields and all kinds of stuff, but the shield's the important bit there. 10 Oblivion Knight Cadre with a Charon Pattern Acquisitor. So they're the Raptor Guard, they're Janisha Cross bodyguard, who have big swords and can do some damage. And then 3 custodian guard squads with 2 spears, 2 guardian spears, and 2 anthracite spears in each. A prosecutor cadre of 5 Sisters of Silence, and a Caladius Grav tank. So I looked at this list and I thought, oh, that could be tough. How would I play that list? Valdor's Beast. Valdor's hard to kill and does instant death on a 4+, I think it is. And in challenges makes you re-roll your invulnerable save. So he's one of those things where if you're going to go for it, you have to go for it. You have to go absolutely full out for it. However, my thinking was if I played this in a normal mission with a few objectives, I would actually just ignore Valdor and I'd go and kill everything else because the rest of it, although it's good, doesn't scare me. Like the Sisters of Silence go down, they're not very tough. Even with their special rules against Demon, I'm cool. I can try and do this and do that to take down the Grav tank if I can get in combat, or I've got some Rift Barbs out there for the Dreadnought and all that kind of stuff. Now, the way Adam played this, and it's within the rules, it's absolutely fine. Janisha Kroll and Constantine Valdor joined the Terran Guard squad with the Presidium Shields as a kind of HQ powerhouse unit. And then first turn, because the Oblivion Knight cadre deploy standing next to their Inquisitor, they get into it. And the Oblivion Knights walk across the board, and Kroll and her buddies then can move across the board in cover, and it's an assault vehicle, so they can assault out of it. It's not something I would do. I think the Custodes tanks don't have assault for a reason, but there was nothing written into the Acquisitor rules to say that Custodes can't get in them. So cool, crack on, do what you want. I didn't think that way because I just dismissed it as an idea. So that I'd heard that happened, so I was kind of expecting it, but there's very little you can do about it. Adam went first, so the you go first. Did I go first? I'm trying to remember now. No, I must have gone first. Either way, couldn't stop it happening. Couldn't get that out there and deal with it. It's fine. It's all good. They charged across the board, and maybe Adam did go first. Actually, I'm trying to remember because I didn't have a go at it until it was across the board. Either way, I then came out of my rift markers, trying to keep my big stuff safe. I think Adam must have gone first because I kind of put myself in a corner. And also, because of the way the objectives went again, I was pushed right back with 2 rift markers, and because because of Janisha Kroll being the Warlord, D3 units can push up the table, and the Sisters of Battle can scout. So, like where I talked earlier about people having played Demons and knowing what they're doing, Adam knew what he was doing, and he forced me right back across the board. And like I say, with only 2 rift markers, it really limits what your choices are and where you can go, and it makes a big difference. So I deployed and lined up some dudes in front of my big dudes. Didn't rolled okay, but didn't roll brilliantly for my reserves. And set out to try and deal with this mess coming at me. Took out the Dreadnought, I think, with shooting, actually. I think that's the one time it really did all right. And a couple of times certainly once managed to stun the Caladius Grav tank, because it's got, I think their weapons have got instant death on them as well, so they can be really scary. And ended up taking that out with I flew a Shrike all the way over to deal with that and make sure it died. But the big problem, and even the Custodian Guard squads, like the Oblivion Knights ran in, did some damage and then died. Custodian Guards ran in, did some damage and were dying slowly, bits and pieces. But the HQ just can't touch. Well, I can touch, but you need a lot of attacks. You need to roll properly for it as well. And Adam played it right and pushed them in and did the damage. And I thought, I mean, it was really early. It was like turn 2, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do here? Am I going to run away and try and control the board space? Hadn't necessarily deployed in the right way to do that, but had to make my decision there and then. Because the one thing you can do, even with a unit like that, I know I can charge 10 lesser demons in, and the chances are he's not going through them in one round, so I can hold off and hold him their return. But what I decided to do was, you're at these events not very often, and you know what? Let's go all in. So I charged in 2 behemoths and my Greater Runestorm Demon Lord into the unit, and thought, if I can get the Warlord, might win the game, and it'll be more fun. Anyway, it'll be a proper game. So what happened with the Presidium Shields is they basically make you -1 to hit the unit. So Valdor challenges out. My Ruin Lord's got to take it, otherwise he doesn't get to strike, and that's pointless. And he does a few wounds to my demon, my HQ, and I think I did one. I think I rolled okay against him actually, but -1 to hit when you've not got a great weapon skill, that's not cool. He's Valdor's sitting there. He's tough. He's got a good save. I think I might have done 1 wound to him or something like that. And the behemoths went in, and unfortunately, when they're hitting on 5s, and the Heteron Guard have got a good invulnerable, and you roll badly, because I did, then that means you do like 1 or 2 wounds, and then you have to make leadership tests everywhere, and your leadership's -1, your strength and toughness is -1, or your toughness certainly. Yeah, strength and toughness is -1 because of Janisha Kroll standing there as well. That then starts to add up. I think I may have killed the whole unit in the end of the Heteron Guard, maybe right at the end, but it took too long. It's 5s to hit with not huge amounts of attacks. The terrain maybe not helping, because this fight was happening. Basically, it was a struggle to get out from a Rift Guards, but also there were custodian squads coming in as well. So it was played that way. Adam put all the pressure on me, on my army, or his army put it all on the demons and was coming at them, and it was tricky to get out around from it. Had I been able to isolate units, that's fine, but eventually Valdor went through everything, as Valdor will do. And to be fair, the Heteron Guard were putting out some punishment with their Paragon Blades and Solar White Power Gauntlets as well. And it was a fair stonking win for Adam. Say, looking back on it, I think I had the I think I rolled the Warlord trait for the huge. No, I had +1. I had the extra combat res thing on my Runestorm Demon Lord, but he didn't last that long, so it wasn't as useful as it could have been. But had you look at the Custodian squads, if they charge a unit of lesser demons, and then I charge a Behemoth or my Runestorm Demon Lord into one of them, then the Custodian squad's used up its charge abilities, and I'm gonna handle them. I'm going to go through them. It might take a round or 2 to do it, but I will go through them. If I could do that whilst keeping the Heteron Guard, and it'll be a challenge. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying, and this is something where sometimes we talk about these things, and I'm like, this is the plan, and plans don't always go to, go to plan. Don't always go how you want them to, but you make allowances for that. You set up the vague idea of the plan, and that would have been my plan to do that, but also to have my board split into 3 parts, and 1 behemoth one side, 1 behemoth the other side, the Ruinstorm Demon Lord in the middle. And if Valdor goes slightly one side, the Ruinstorm Demon Lord could run away from him, and then I would be concentrating on taking out the even if Valdor wants to get into the Acquisitor and get over there, it still takes time. So that's the way I would have played it in a more regular scenario, and that's fine. That's it's not a problem. We could easily have drawn a regular scenario that meant killing the Warlord was a big thing, but it was a good, tough game. Adam played it well. I potentially could have played it better, partly through my own choice, partly through not quite getting that rule right. or getting the deployment right, should I say. It's one of those ones that I maybe like to play again and see how it goes. But I think my army is slightly on the back foot against that army anyway, and it would need to be played well. But that's part of the fun, isn't it? Pitting yourself against an opponent. And then my final game was against Ross. I'm not going to give away too much of the story. I haven't really given away the other story because the March event will be using the same story. So it's a bit difficult to talk about this without giving up too much of the story. But hopefully there'll be a different course of events, and you'll play a slightly different set of scenarios going forwards. But this mission was all about the Loyalists trying to get to a point on the battlefield. I can't remember what it's called, the actual mission that they use out of the book that does it. So this uses an L-shaped deployment. So half the length of the table and 12 on, except for the final 12 inches, which went up to 48 on, if you get what I mean. So a fat L along the length of the longer edge of the board. And the Loyalists were attacking, trying to reach a point that they placed on the attacker's long board edge, I think, or table edge, so any of them. And I say so they had to get after a random. No, this is 5 turns with a possibility of a 6th. So, and a 4+ to get a 6th as well. So you had to, and this was a key factor in our game. You had to be there on turn 5 to try and make sure they win the game, the Loyalists. And the only thing about it was those scoring units within 12 inches of that objective. The defenders' scoring was destroying heavy and Lord of War. So destroying units, 1 victory point or 2 victory points for heavy support and Lord of War options. With Slay the Warlord, attrition for the defenders and last man standing for the attackers. And then this had a random table of things happening across the worldscape that could affect the game, and it did a little bit. But we'll get into Ross's army first. He had a Chagorian Brotherhood, a White Scars army, a Librarian, Psychic Mastery level 1, 4-stave Shamshir jet bike, a Praetor on a jet bike with Paragon Blade Refractor Field, 6 Golden Keshig, one of them with the champion having a Thunder Hammer, a Hussar Squadron of 5, 3 Hunter Squadron jet bikes, 2 units of 6 Hunter Squadron jet bikes with 2 Volkite Culverins in, another 3, so 2 units of 6 with 2 Volkite Culverins and 2 units of 3 just with the heavy bolters, an Outrider Squad with twin link plasma guns, and then we had 2 Javelin and Attack Speeders in 1 unit, a Primus Lightning Strike Fighter and 2 Kazagan Assault Speeders, and a Sakara and Venator Tank Destroyer. So that's quite funny. He talked about the Venator not being that great in this game, and I was like, well, you can take wounds and still do a little bit. And then we rolled the 2d6 for the kind of a random event that happened, and it ended up with that tank being removed from the game, so it didn't get to do anything at all, which is a bit of a shame for him. But I mean, it could have been worse if that had been a different unit. So I think that was kind of like, as far as things go, not too shabby. And essentially Ross played, did he go first? I think he attacker player, blah 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 blah. Defending player goes first unless they can seize, and he didn't seize, which is not necessarily a bad thing. So my idea for this mission was defending this point with the speed that that White Scars can have and the ability to control the table. I knew that if I pushed too far forwards, I'd never get back, and then that would cause me problems. So I've only got a couple of units that are quick enough to do it. So I didn't move too much. I created a semicircle around the objective that he wanted to get to, and I waited. And so jet bikes screamed round covering in what would normally be less than 12 inches most of the time from his edge of the board and down the sides a little bit, and shot at me. I did send one behemoth off to head towards my left flank. He had most of his stuff then coming in on the right flank, and he stayed his distance and started to pling off wounds, and was killing a few lesser demons and bits and pieces. Plasma guns, again, were great against demons, so the Outrider squad doing great things there. And this game essentially came down to me having to push out at him and catching. There was a couple of smaller units. I think it was the Outriders at one point because they were getting in closer to use all their shots. There was the Outriders, and there was another, the Hussar squad as well, to come out at those, and the dogs being useful. The not cavalry, the beasts being a useful thing in this because of their extra movement, being able to catch up with them. And my behemoth was off on the other side. And it was like turn 3 or 4 where I think might have been turn 4 where I really got into him and managed to take out a few squads. The Golden Keshig came flying in at my 2 Shrikes who were flying around, came in at one of them and did very little. They're a very expensive squad with not particularly good rules. And they lost by a couple and then ran away and died. And that's not good. It's not good for them at all. There was, my Shrikes in this game, they didn't do that well in terms of the rolls I was making. But what they could do is they could vector strike, even stuff on the floor, just one hit at a time. Like if you've got 6 jet bikes and you kill a jet bike, that's not a bad thing. And vector strike's not allowing cover saves and being AP2 hits. Absolutely fantastic. And then when the Primaris Lightning Strike Fighter, having a couple of shots at that, trying to vector strike land speeders again, because a unit of 2 of them, if you can, you've got a half decent chance of really damaging one, but you've also got just the fact that you can make one of them snap fire. Which is really useful. So they were flying around, causing some problems, landing a couple of times and flying off. And I got into his right flank and killed a few things. And one of the major things that did was actually push everything back again, because it didn't, if I could have let Frog from one unit to another unit, then it would have been game over for him right there and then. On one of the other sides, he did come in and absolutely ream a unit of lesser demons and stuff with Jetbiker squad. But the other thing I had to be very careful of was if I charged something, they had hit and run. So if I charged out too much, I could actually give him the additional movement to swing around. So it was a really, like various parts of this game, it didn't seem a lot was happening. There was lots of dice being rolled, not a lot going down and bits like that. And he reduced a fair amount of units down to like a few models here and there. And then made an absolute, a charge on turn 5 to try and get those squads in. And there was only 2 or 3 that he had a chance of getting in, or 2, something like that, because the line held. And the game went on for another turn after that, which meant I could then turn around and kill those units because I had the reserves there. My Ruinstorm Demon Lord, I think he moved 6 inches one way and then 6 inches back the other way at one point, and that was about all he did, because he was there to stop Ross being able to do that a turn earlier and not giving him the space. So what we got was maybe not a particularly enthralling game in terms of damage going on and all that, but was fairly tactical. And I don't think we talked a little bit about afterwards. He had his 2 javelins started off the board, and his Kazagan started on the board, I think it was. Maybe he was going to do it the other way around, but it's a hard one to get right. I don't necessarily think he did a lot wrong. The big things become hard for him to deal with. There's only so much Volkite, there's only so much the heavy bolters can do in terms of him in this mission type. had it being a regular mission with objectives. It's an interesting one because, again, I could come out at him then, try and push him back, but then he can swing around and hit one side of the board. I was a bit worried that I just wasn't going to be able to catch him at all. And that's part of the reason why I deployed and acted that way. But that was a fantastic game. I really look forward to playing Ross again. I'm not too sure when we're going to be at. He's from Bradford, so you never know. Or Gaming Club Bradford was his club, so who knows? But yeah, it was a fun game, and it came down to I only won by like 2 or 3 points, but it would have been quite hard because I got whichever one it was, attrition and whatever, and he missed out on last man standing. But again, as I say, there were units with like 2 models left, that kind of thing, which can happen quite a lot actually. Something you need to be aware of with Daemons. I don't think it would have affected too much with Ross because that wasn't his mission. Like he couldn't then put all those resources into killing that unit because he had the other stuff to handle on. But if you have got a slightly more conventional army, then 10 barber shots into those last 2 models can make a big difference. But yeah, it was a couple of 2 or 3 points in it. It was a close game. It was a fantastic game actually. I really enjoyed it. So would like to play Ross again. So overall, the weekend was good. It was really good. Company of Legends, there was slightly less people there. I will say slightly, when I first went to Company of Legends, there was a lot more people I knew better there, shall we say. I think that's the best way of saying it. Like, proper friends that I talked to a lot, that kind of thing. And they usually came out with 1 or 2 as well. So it was a slightly different crowd for me than normal, which is fine. It's good. Met some really cool people. People who've been there who I haven't managed maybe converse with quite as much as well. So that's quite nice. But as I say, I can be a little bit reticent sometimes, or a little bit kind of lonerish at these kind of things. What really didn't help was the week before I was up. I think I had like between 4 and 6 hours sleep every night, which I struggle with. Trying to get my army painted. I'm so slow that I was then there all Friday night, sat in the eating area painting, just to get my models to a point where they could get put on the board. Because I don't want to be the guy who has I'm painting models and it happens and life gets in the way of people, and that's fine. But I wanted to make sure I could do what I could do, so I did that. I was up painting just past midnight after having driven up from the south coast of England up till fairly far north, should we say. So it was a long day, and actually over the weekend that affected me. I didn't enjoy Company of Legends as much as normal, not necessarily because of anything that Company of Legends did or anyone else did there, but I was tired, really tired, and it affected my concentration, and it affected my ability to engage in the way that maybe I would normally do, and it's something that we have to think about next time. Luckily this army's now like, I haven't done any painting on it since I got back, but I will do, and that army I will be able to take an army, and maybe what I should have done was slightly changed what I was doing before heading up there, so I didn't put myself under that pressure to do it. And that all plays into me forgetting the model. I was late night before I was leaving at 7 o'clock in the morning because I had a couple of hours sat in Bugman's. But I made that mistake because I was so tired, and that's something I've forgotten about events. Like, you need to be refreshed for it and stuff like that as well. Gaming was good, enjoyed that. The list worked okay. It's a tricky one. I kind of want to make it better, but I don't want to make it like OTT. There was Adam, when we were playing, was like, he was saying that if you bought the gargantuan creature, 600 points plus whatever abilities you give him, up near 700 points, then I would be causing his talons a real problem, and that's potentially true. And it's something that I want to try out at some point, but I don't think it's something that I'm going to automatically go to every time. I think it's a slowish list. It'll be interesting in more regular scenarios, kind of how it did across that time. Maybe people deploying a bit deeper. So one thing everyone did was use their space. Now, I said about pushing demons back. You can't always do it. You can't always come out and push them back. But what you can do is you can deploy a unit on the line to make sure that the demons have to deploy 12 inches away and then have the other stuff deeper into your deployment zone. That's not a problem. And keeping demons at arm's reach is never a bad idea. So that's a potential thing to do. On my side of things, there were a couple of times where I was like, my army's really slow. Like, a lot of it moves 6 inches. The beasts can be really good because they can move the 12 inches, and they're tough as well. Basic, strength and toughness 5 is fantastic as a base level. The HQ selections, whatever they're called, the demon brutes are fantastic, and I want more of them in the army at some point. I will need to go and buy some more. I definitely want some winged versions, so I'm going to have to figure out how I do that moving forwards. The Shrikes, it's one of those things. Shrikes, I know they're 180 points each, and I know they're not going to be amazing. However, they didn't do a lot. And part of them not doing a lot was bad dice rolling, actually. The Rift Barbs just always seem to miss or roll a 1 on armor penetration. Yeah, they're strength 9 turn 1, strength 10 turn 1. Like, you're getting through most vehicles, and particularly some of the lighter vehicles. I was just rolling 1s. Knowing when to use them, when to have them low, flying low and high. They also can get behind the board, they're quick. So they can come on, flying full speed and get to the rear of a vehicle. They shoot behind, vector strike it, and shoot it. And that should be a good ability, but it just didn't seem to do a lot. They're a weird unit in that respect, because I did roll below average with them. Whether I need 2 of them, whether they can be swapped out for something else, I can't remember what else is in the fast attack options, to be fair. There's not a lot. Cavalry, which aren't particularly good, but maybe, they're not expensive, so maybe swapping out some cavalry and opening them up for, although someone's called them cavalry here on my army builder. That's terrible, whoever's done that. We maybe swapping them out for some cavalry, and then at least I've got a slightly different unit in the army then as well, because I'll use the Blood Crushers models. So they provide a different visual cue point as well. But then that I could take out some of the lesser demons and put in some swarms. Is something I want to do. Heaven knows how I'm going to do Crimson Fury swarms, but that's something I maybe need to look at. Maybe I need to get something 3D printed, which can fit the aesthetic. But one thing I do want to try is not huge units, but maybe slightly bigger units of lesser demons. I would like to put some more beasts in there. Maybe I lose. It's just tough. You've only got 6 troop options. But if I pulled the 3 units of 10 lesser demons into 2 units of 15, and then had another unit of beasts in there, maybe boost one of them up. The 2 units of 5 lesser demons, like the anti-tank ones, they're useful. They're one of those things where a lot of games they're not going to do a huge amount, but some games they come in and can really help. Like, you're not overcommitting into an area to go and kill a vehicle or something like that. So it's tough on how many troops choices you get to play with. Just having a look through here. Elites, you've only got 1 option. Heavy support, the behemoths are great, but 300 points each. Base, they should be great for that point. I think mine was 330, something like that. The big thing about them is their toughness, and the greater Ruinstorm demon beasts that mine worked out at like 135, I think. They go down a lot quicker. At least with the behemoths, like, you can't just fire your bolt guns at them first 2 turns. It's not going to do anything, and that means they are that much more tough. They've got the 10 wounds, whereas the Greater Ruinstorm Demon Beasts are 4 wounds at toughness 6. So, it's a massive difference. And for being just under half the price, I think you get more than double out of the behemoth than you do with that in general. So, but I say they're cheap, so maybe I look at having a slightly different mix up of that. I mean, the good thing is there's so much you can do with this army, and play around with it. As I say, I really want to try out the Lord of War at some point. Then all of a sudden the Ruinstorm Archdemon. Then all of a sudden you're looking at like just a massive amount of points sucked out of the army. I mean, it's going to be 700 points minimum, really, once you're into it, with the Ruinstorm Archdemon. And it might be overkill for some games, and for some games it might be that difference where you have got the stomps that you can use. How many wounds does it have, actually? Because I haven't really looked at its stats, to be honest. So it's strength 9, toughness 8 base. So yeah, you can't fire any small weaponry at it till turn 5 with 10 wounds. It's a gargantuan creature. It's not bad at all with 6 attacks, and it's got the special rules around that as well. So maybe that's something I look at. But I'm going to expand the army, so I'm going to get more Bloodletters painted up. I've already got more Corn Hounds painted up. I might have to play around with jump packs on some of my lesser demon models, maybe having the winged options, because they were quite cool. I tell you what did make a difference with the brutes, not having rend on the demon brutes. If I wanted to make the army tougher, like taking the rift barbs off the brutes. It's one of those things. I didn't play any real full-on tank armies, so like there might be a case then where the rift barbs do help out a lot. But when you're putting the brutes into combat, yeah, they don't go anywhere, but they also don't go through stuff. Because again, once you've charged, you lose a lot of attacks with this army. And I do want to get more just generally of them, because units of 6, something like that, could be quite fun. Units of 6 will be like just under 400 points or something like that. So a lot of options there to play with, a lot of stuff to play with. What I'll have to do is get another event and write another list up and see what we can do with it, because I'm not finished with the Crimson Fury Demons yet. I've got the big model for the Archdemon is there, ready to go. I'm just having a mate build it so I can get that ready to paint and try that out. I've got my new Ruinstorm Archdemon, Ruinstorm Demon Lord, my Bellicle. I've got him here ready to go with some big wings as well, which is all good. And I might have to look at what I have to do is stop myself building other demon armies, which is always a constant threat of wanting more models, which I'm sure all of you can understand. Anyway, it's starting to get a little bit stream of consciousness, so we'll pull that one out. The army works okay. There's lots I could change to make it work different and feel better to play it. There's almost too many options though, and that is the good, the curse of demon armies. So what I'll do is what I might do is have a look back at it and play some games with it and report back on how that's worked as well. So let me know what you think of talking through that and how it went. So it was a couple of weeks after the event, so it's a little bit of details were fuzzy, but I hope it makes some sense. Let me know what you think of it. Let me know if it's something you want to see more of, and we can go from there.
and you've made it to the end of another episode of the Imperial Truth podcast. There has been stuff that's happened since recording this and finally getting it out, and me recording this last little bit as well. But we're not going to do that. We're going to deal with that all much later. Next episode. The only thing I will say is Warhawk's coming. Amazing. I'm getting this out the week of pre-order, so good luck for those people that go for limited edition. I think we'll talk to Howard about the release structure of Warhawk, the nature of the way GW have done it, and whether that means we're going to see change and everything. We'll talk about that next episode, I'm sure. I'm just seriously looking forward to finally getting to read it. So exciting times. We will cover it at some point, and we will try and cover it soon-ish, because, as I say, every version will be out, but it might take a little while to get around to digesting it properly, and I will probably read it and then listen to it if it's as good as if it's as good as I've heard from another author, and indeed as good as I think we all hope it will be, because we all want it to be pretty amazing, I'm sure. I did mention when Howard was on, getting his code for Element Games. So if you are ordering through from Element Games any toys this weekend, I can't even remember what's out, or in subsequent weekends, go through the link in the show notes or click on the banner on the advert. The advert banner on the website, imperialtruth.com, and it will take you to Element, and you will help supporting us if you buy that way. And then when you get to the end, don't forget to put in a code for your crystals, so you get double crystals, and the person that you the person who owns the code that you put in will get some crystals as well. Well, mine's on there at GRE259. Howard's is HOW583. So if you want to show Howard some love, then you could do that as well, which is cool. As usual, if you've got any feedback, any questions, any topic suggestions, anything you think we get wrong, anything like that really, then you can email Greg at theimperialtruth.com, and that'll be great. That'll be awesome. You can also get hold of me on, the show's on Twitter, at Imperial_Truth. I'm at Child of Fang on Twitter. Facebook, you can go to the group there. Instagram, don't use it much, I know. And then we have the Patreon if you really like what we're doing. And actually, the show does now have a Ko-fi account, or a coffee account. I actually tried to look up the official way of saying it, because I have heard people saying it somewhere else, but if the website don't call it coffee after the fact that they represent the fact that you're buying the person a coffee, then they're idiots and they're wrong. So it's coffee, as far as I'm concerned. So you can find that at it's coffee, that's ko-fi.com /the Imperial Truth Full Stride. On there I will put links in the show notes as well. You can, I know some people use it, you can do monthly subscriptions. You can do individual payments, which is why I set it up. I'm not expecting to earn millions off this or anything like that and be able to quit my job. I appreciate that's not going to happen, but some people do like to support the show. And this way, if you feel like you don't want to commit to a Patreon or anything like that, then that's cool, that's fine. You can do a single payment through Coffee there. And all this, while I'm saying all this, please remember that the show will always be free. No one has to do this. I also don't provide extra content. I want to be absolutely upfront with that. I don't have the time or the organisational skills, as you probably are aware by the release dates that accompany my podcasts. So this is purely an avenue for those people who wanted to say a little bit more than just thank you. And thank you to anyone who has chosen to do that, who believes this show is worth even $1 of their money. It is absolutely appreciated, and I want you all to know that. And that goes for anyone who shares the podcast with friends, or promotes it in any way, leaves feedback on iTunes or ratings on iTunes. Willow's just deciding to jump in a brand new cardboard box. She's absolutely terrible. But yeah, anyone who shares the show or rates the show or anything like that, then you absolutely have my thanks. It really is appreciated. But I think we'll leave it there. We're going to have stuff to talk about next week. Warhawk. We're going to have the latest Legion dispatch that's dropped. We're going to probably, we should have the next, or hopefully we'll have the next Exemplary Battles article as well. I don't know what the release schedule is on those, but hopefully we'll have that. And who knows what else? More events and more things going on, which is all good as far as I'm concerned. So there's plenty to leave for next week. And because of that, I will leave you. You have been listening to The Imperial Truth.